Come on, Annie. Let's go to the movies.
This is the Cinereelists. My name is Kyle,
My name is James.
and we're here to talk about movies, movie lists, and movie obsession for the next hour or so. James, thanks for joining me tonight.
Thanks for joining me. We are without Zach this week.
Correct.
No idea what he's doing.
We don't know where he is. We don't know what he's doing. We haven't heard from him in a while.
He might be missing. We might have to make a police report here any minute.
Is it 24 hours, 1 week, a month? How long do you wait before you contact the police?
I don't know.
Okay. How long do you wait on your friend before you contact the police? Especially if it's Zach. He can disappear sometimes. He's a little flighty.
I mean, Zach and I are like on, I don't know, every 3 days. Well, if you count the Discord, it's more than every 3 days. But if you count like just straight texting, it's like, we go in phases.
Yeah.
Have you talked to Zach consistently for as long as you've known him? Or were there like years where you guys didn't really talk much?
I would say we talked less in college.
Sure.
Like we would meet up. We would like meet up on breaks in college,
Uh-huh.
and we would occasionally we had instant messenger, and I think we'd instant message now and then.
Right.
But yeah, I would say through most of college we were not in constant communication.
Sure.
And then a couple years after college, then the texting and the especially once we got iPhones and things like that, then the communication became much more frequent.
Interesting. Sure. I'm going up to Georgia at the end of July for
Mhm.
like 4 days, and I'm hanging out with two of my high school buddies
Okay.
and their families, and it's going to be interesting because that has never happened.
To hang out with their families.
I mean, even hanging out with them, like
Okay.
I have hung out with them since high school, more towards the college years, and then they got married and moved to different states. And so we've kept in loose touch, but I
Mhm.
mean, the most I've never hung out with, not never. It's been over a decade since I've hung out with them both at the same time. And probably like 6 hours at the most I would hang out with them. So the idea of like being up in Georgia in a cabin with them and their families. By families, I mean they both, I believe, have 4 kids and wives, and so
Oh yeah.
there's no way I've hung out with the wives for 3 days, 4 days in a row. You know what I mean? So it's gonna be interesting. I mean, I'm looking forward to it. I'm not scared of it. It's just a dynamic that I cannot predict, basically.
When you said two friends and their families, I just assumed it was their parents.
No,
Because they're
they're
like,
in
oh,
their
it's their high school friends and their
right.
parents. No, of course, like they're in their 30s and 40s. They have families of their own. So
Right. And one of these guys I keep in pretty good communication with, um, meaning like a couple times a year we'll
okay.
talk. And then the other one I talk like once every 2 or 3 years to for an hour.
Mm.
Um, but we were pretty tight in high school, and so I'm sure it'll be fine. But
I I find with those friendships, you fall back into your natural routines pretty quickly.
sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
unless someone's drastically changed. I think, it might be a little awkward at first. It's been a while. The families are there, but you'll soon find your you'll find your groove.
Yeah. I'm not too concerned about it. It's more gonna be wild just to see them as parents. in
Yeah.
like a in like a pretty real way. You know what I mean? 3.5 days is enough to get somewhat of a vibe for who they are now. And I'm sure it's just shades of who they were. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But it'll be interesting. Plus their kids have never really hung out together. So I have no idea how that's gonna go. It'll be fun.
Everyone tries to be the perfect parent for the first 24 hours. And then you're like,
Right.
and then you just kind of fall back into your whatever your parenting habits are. You
The
fall back into
right.
them
The
because
cracks start to show.
right because the kids are like, this is not how we do things. This is not who you are. Don't try and show off for them.
Sure. I want to do. We should probably talk about this off mic, but at some point I want to do like a Cinerealist get together at the cabin too. I think that would be fun.
That would be like with the families?
Yeah, you guys and Zach
Yeah.
and me, and um, I don't know. Pretty much anybody associated with the podcast who wanted to come. I think. I mean, there is limited room. We can't fill the entire place, but I mean, end of end of June we're gonna have 6, 12, 14 people. So I don't know who else would come, but
I like this idea of like a Cinerealist retreat weekend.
yeah.
It's like us and fans.
Sure. Well, if you're gonna go all the way to Georgia, it might be more than a weekend, but
Well, yes, but yeah. I'm thinking like we get there Saturday morning, we leave Sunday afternoon. A good
Sure.
36 hours is all I really need.
Yeah, you'll just take the helicopter and land it right outside of the cabin. I mean, it takes
Yeah,
2 hours. If you fly into Atlanta, it takes 2 hours from there to get to the cabin.
how is
So
the helipad coming along? Is it ready yet?
it's not ready. I don't
Okay.
think it will be anytime soon.
I'm gonna need that before I can make it out there. So
Sure.
you let me know.
Right. Um, yeah, we should do that someday for sure.
I think that'd be fun.
Kyle, we're not here to make plans for the future, though. We're here to talk about the past. What a segue.
What a segue. That's you should write movies.
The past being our top 10, last 10, meaning the last 10 movies we watched, we're going to list them in order of preference.
To hear you describe it for the
Sure.
audience.
Well, that's about
Yeah.
maybe the shortest it's ever been described.
For sure. I think I need to re-describe it because people might have missed what you said.
Okay, well, let's talk housekeeping first, and
Great.
then you can reiterate what we're doing here today. So yeah, before we jump into the movie goodness, we need to remind you that there's a video version of this podcast on YouTube. Go to YouTube, search Cinereelists, find us there, subscribe. You can watch the podcast while you listen to it. And you could also find us on Patreon at patreon.com/Cinereelists. You can get extra after show audio by supporting the podcast and other Cinerealist swag, including like a not often used feature of being a Patreon supporter is that you get early episodes, including this one. If you're a
Mhm.
Patreon listener, you're listening to this. Who knows how much time before everybody else is listening to this? But we pre-recorded it, and they got it first. So
You're
check us
welcome.
out. Yeah, exactly. No, we are thankful.
Oh, that's right. That's right. We're thankful. Sorry, I'm working on that. Thank you.
Yeah, find us on Apple Podcasts, leave us a review there, we'd appreciate that, or send us a listener email to heyguys@cinerealist.com. Maybe send us your last 10 top 10, which Kyle is going to re-describe to you what that is.
Top 10, top 10, and top 10, and last 10, and last 10, and a last 10, last 10, and top 10, top 10, and top 10, and top 10, and last 10, last 10, and last 10, and last 10, and top 10.
So, as James briefly stated about a minute ago, a top 10 last 10 is a list where we take the top. No, I messed up already. All right. Podcast magic, edit that out. Let's try this again.
Sure.
No, it's staying. Hey, a top 10 last 10 is a list where we take the last 10 movies we watched and then we order them from least favorite to favorite. That's the only criteria.
Sure. Exactly what it is. These typically take a while, just because it's a lot of movies to go through. So why don't we jump into it?
Is there a chance we'll have any crossover, do you think?
Um, I think with one movie that
Oh,
both
yes.
of us really want to talk about, I think
Yes.
we will definitely cross over with one movie. We'll see about the rest.
When we get to that one movie, are we going to just say it's going to be spoilers?
I think maybe at the end of the pod, we'll give our broad thoughts.
Okay.
Maybe the second time it comes up, we'll do broad thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
and from there, we'll do a spoiler at the end because it's a
Okay.
relatively new. We're talking about the movie Men. that new Alex Garland movie. Both Kyle and I
Yep.
saw it. We definitely wanted to talk about it. And so you kind of can't talk about everything that movie has to offer without talking spoilers. So if you're interested in Men, keep listening. That sounded weird to say out loud. If you're interested in Alex Garland's Men, keep
Nope,
listening.
Not much better.
For spoiler free through the episode, and listen after the podcast for the spoiler chat.
That joke came up a lot in my house. I texted Megan and be like, I'm gonna go see Men tonight, and she's like, which ones? I'm like, no, not that.
Sure.
So eventually I started saying the movie Men.
Awesome. Why don't I go first?
Please.
All right. So these are ordered in order of preference. So this one is the movie that I enjoyed the least out of the last 10 I saw. And it's a 2020 movie titled Survive. Just Survive.
Just Survive.
It's a survival thriller, or at least it was billed as that. And I like survival thrillers. It looked very much kind of like a plane crashes in the mountains. You have to survive the snow and figure out how to, survive the elements type of movie, which I don't know if that's a trope, but it's definitely a genre at this point.
Mhm.
And then the other thing that caught me about this one was that Sophie Turner was in it, and she played one of the daughters on Game of Thrones. It's her. I forget her.
Oh,
character
she's
name.
Sansa Stark.
She's Sansa. Yep,
She's-
she's Sansa Stark. So I was like, all right, I'll watch this. And I think at the time it didn't even have a Rotten Tomatoes entry, which confused me.
Hmm.
But I was like, why not? Then I started watching it, and it was bad. It was really bad. And she's opposite Corey Hawkins, and these two people again get stuck in the wilderness, and they have to find their way back, and they lean on each other to fight the elements and nature to make it back. And it's just the most blah version of that framing that I could imagine. And on top of that, for some reason, it felt like the story was like really I don't know. It seemed like it felt uneven while I was watching it, and then afterwards I was putting in my entry into Letterbox, and I read on somebody else's review that it was filmed as a Quibi series.
Oh.
And then when Quibi went under, they recut it into this movie, which makes a lot of sense to me after seeing it. Because it's not that the plot was like every 7 minutes it was, cutting to a cliffhanger or something like that. It just felt like it was just uneven. Like there were no, it was like constant high points. Or what they thought were high points.
Mhm.
But no real character building, which survival movies are all about character building. You have to care about these people, and you
Yeah.
have to care about their journey and those types of things. And you just did not get there for sure. And then the other thing that really offended me is that there was a lot of pop music in it, and like pop music played as like inspirational music. It's not like somebody's listening to an iPod or something like that.
Mhm.
It's like literally somebody surviving the elements, and then all of a sudden like a Katy Perry song cues up to like bring in the inspirational feels.
Oh, so it's like they're climbing through the snow to
Right.
like
And all of a sudden you have this background
California
music.
girls playing in the background.
Right. Well, I don't know about California.
No, maybe not
girls,
that one.
but,
Eye of the
that
Tiger.
song,
That song
"Hear Me
is-
Roar," I think
Yeah,
is
Roar,
one of
that's the
one of
one,
her
yep.
songs. Yeah.
Yep.
I don't remember if that's the one that's in it, but it was just like a sequence of pop songs that felt entirely misplaced,
Mhm.
I would say. Sometimes experiments like that work, you know what I mean? Like kind of fusing two things that shouldn't go together. Sometimes that works really well. And in this case, it was just like, what is this? Why are they doing this? So yeah, I gave it a 1.5, and I don't recommend it to anybody.
I would have loved it if she emerged from the woods and the Triumph music plays and it's I Kissed a Girl.
No, Not that kind of movie.
Not that kind of movie. Wrong Katy Perry song.
Sure.
All right, 1.5. Do not recommend the Quibi. I almost call it the Quick Bites. The
Yeah.
Quibi series recut into a movie.
Survive. Evidently, it was 12 episodes.
Okay, so that's feature length.
Yeah.
If you take 7 minutes a pop. Yeah.
Right.
Barely, but that's feature length. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, my number 10 is a 2021, I guess you can call it rom-com, maybe just comedy. This is Vacation Friends, starring John Cena, Little Rel Howery, Meredith Hagner, and Yvonne Orji.
I've never even heard of this.
It's on Hulu. I think it was a movie that just got snatched up by Hulu.
Mm-hmm.
I saw it advertised on their front page. My wife and I were in the mood for a watchable comedy. We figured we weren't expecting to be blown away, but it's 90 minutes on Hulu. Who cares? Let's check it out. John Cena I like for the most part.
Sure.
Little Rel Howery I really like. So anyway, Little Rel Howery, which is such a hard name to say, and Yvonne Orji are a straight-laced couple that is on vacation in Mexico. I believe maybe they just got engaged or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And he's very by the book. He's got everything planned out. We're doing horseback riding this time and this at this time, and that kind of character. And then they encounter John Cena and his wife, played by Meredith Hagner, who are kind of like this loose party couple. They're riding jet skis, they're crashing into things, and there's having a fly by the seat of your pants, who cares kind of vacation.
Mm-hmm.
So the four of them link up and get Little Rel Howery and Yvonne Orji out of their shells and get them to open up and have a good time, and they all have a blast and they're having fun on vacation. Then the couple whose names I can't pronounce go home for the vacation saying, "Wow, that was a great time. We partied. We'll never see those people again." And who happens to show up but their vacation friends who want to keep the party going. So that's kind of your setup for the movie. And I mean, my biggest issue with this movie was it just wasn't funny. They're the comedy was coming from the situations they were in, but there are no actual jokes written. It was more like, oh, wouldn't this be funny situation if they were drunk in a hot tub and this happens. But no one's actually writing a joke beyond the scenario.
Mm-hmm.
And then John Cena, who I generally like, he's not my favorite actor, but I think he's, for a wrestler turned actor, he probably has more range than The Rock, to be completely honest. He's just mugging for the camera the whole time. He's just hamming it up, and not in a good way.
Sure.
The Lost City, for all the things I didn't like about it, Channing Tatum, he can ham it up the right way for the camera.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like John Cena was trying to find that Channing Tatum energy, and I don't know. I was just annoyed by him after a while of, him either being or just being really serious. And yeah, they try and end in crazy situations, but it just sort of got tedious after a while.
Sure.
I gave it 2 stars. I think some other people might enjoy it more, so it's not a terrible movie. It's probably better than Survive, but
Sure.
I say if you check it out for free on Hulu, don't hold your breath for anything amazing.
Sure. I mean, the only movie that I've seen that I can really think of where I'm like, John Cena was the best part of that movie is that movie Blockers. Have you ever seen that?
I have not seen that, no.
You and Megan might get a kick out of Blockers.
Okay.
I mean, it's no 5-star movie for sure. But if, again, you're just looking for a watchable comedy without the kid in the room, Blockers is, we'll give that to you.
Okay.
Imagine.
Cool. If it's streaming somewhere for free and we're looking for something to watch, we'll check it out.
Definitely.
It's a pretty low bar.
My number 9 is a 2022 movie that I saw in movie theaters titled Ambulance.
Oh, the Michael Bay.
The Michael Bay movie.
Yeah.
Yep. It's number 9 for a reason. It's not good, I would say. I also gave this one a 1.5. And I think I'm afraid Michael Bay does not have any more tricks up his sleeve. Maybe. I don't know. I mean, this movie does have one thing going for it, and it's Jake Gyllenhaal, of all people. Just absolutely hamming it up the entire movie. He kind of plays the bad influence of the movie. So the plot is you've got this former military guy who is in debt. He has this brother who's somehow related to like organized crime or something like that. This crime, you know,
Mhm.
this devious brother who is like, "Hey, you're in debt. I know of this place we can rob and we can make $30 million and you'll never have to worry about money again, and you deserve this. That's why you should help me do this." And so Jake Gyllenhaal kind of plays the bad guy because he's the guy who's convincing his brother to do a thing that he probably shouldn't do. And then they recruit a bunch of people to go on this heist. And then, of course, the heist goes wrong and people die. And in order to get away, they commandeer an ambulance. And then, like, the first half of the movie is all the setup and the heist, and the back half of the movie is them being chased while they're in this ambulance. Meanwhile, there's a um, uh, female medic working on somebody in the back of the ambulance while they're driving it, and they're like kind of holding her and the patient hostage while
Mhm.
they're driving the ambulance so that they won't just get blasted off the road, basically. Um, and all of that sounds like it would be the perfect formula for a thriller, I
It
guess. You know what I
sounds
mean?
like fun, yeah.
It sounds like fun if you are not just completely bored by um what's his name's visuals. Um
Michael
the
Bay?
director, Michael Bay's
Yep.
visuals, like I, for some reason I can watch The Rock and I understand that when characters are talking to each other in The Rock in like a normal boring exposition type scene, the camera moves. But it does not move as much as Michael Bay has landed on wanting it to move in like all of his movies of the last 20 years. Like he literally has to carousel circle
Yeah,
both
right,
characters while
yes.
they are talking and it almost makes me dizzy.
Yep.
The camera's moving so fast and it's really unnecessary, I would say, and not I think he thinks it's flashy and cool, and I think I've determined it's unnecessary and kind of boring now because it's very predictable that he's going to do that type of thing. And so uh yeah, I just found that at any moment, instead of being impressed or excited by what they were doing, I was just kind of rolling my eyes at it. Maybe that's unfair. Maybe if somebody's never seen a Michael Bay movie, they'll watch this and think it's the coolest thing they've ever seen. But I've seen it before. It kind of feels very one trick pony. But Jake Gyllenhaal acting out of his mind is the only reason this gets a 1.5 versus like a half star,
Because he's doing his thing.
because he's actually interesting in the movie. I'm not saying he's successful at what he's doing, but at least it's different. So, my number 9.
All right. That's a movie when I saw the trailer for it and I saw it was Michael Bay, I'm like, this is probably bad, but it looks like fun. But it sounds like it's not even bad fun.
I mean, I didn't have fun with it, but
Mhm.
maybe other people would.
Okay. That's too bad. All right, my number 9, and I'll admit that my list overall are movies that I didn't hate any of them. Like Vacation
Mhm.
Friends was definitely my only 2-star. Everything here is 2.5 and above. So either I was neutral on or I liked. So my number 9 is a 2021 movie. It's a movie I think you actually talked about on Top 10 Last 10 not too long ago. The Kingsman.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, starring Ray Fiennes. This is the prequel to the Kingsmen Secret Service movies they're
Mhm.
called. I saw the first one and was impressed by it. It blew me, or not didn't blew me away, but it was definitely more than I was expecting from it. I
Mhm.
never saw the second one because I heard it was not that great. And then you talk about the third one, or this prequel. I thought, hey, I'll check it out. I think again, it was probably playing on Hulu or HBO somewhere free, and we thought,
Mhm.
we're not free on one of the services we had, so we thought let's check it out. Why not? So,
Sure.
yeah, this is the prequel to it tells the story of how Ray Fiennes eventually founds the Kingsmen service, but not really. That's kind of at the very end. At the
Mhm.
very end of the movie, he's like, okay, and we're gonna, because of all the things that happen, we're gonna open the Kingsman. This is a movie I think would have actually operated better if it was not connected to the Kingsman world,
Hmm.
because it really felt like this kind of tacked on that ending to it.
Mhm.
And the other reason why is because the middle section of this movie is where it kind of lost all the energy for me. So in the first half, Ray finds who I think he's playing like an MI6 agent. It's kind of like a Bond movie where
Mhm.
there's this super villain who's getting all these other villains of the World War One era together to for some mass plot, and he's trying to sort of connect the dots with it. And a big chunk of it is him following Rasputin,
Mhm.
the Russian patriarch at the time. And that's just such an interesting character. It's played by is it like Rice Ilfin or something like that.
Mhm. Yeah.
And he's just playing Rasputin like
A
kind of
madman.
right, exactly. And like it's just chewing the scenery, having a lot of fun with it. And I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, like this is kind of ridiculous, but I like this ridiculous character who's, like Cossack dancing while he's fighting and
Mhm.
they right, all that. Well,
Yeah,
spoiler alert.
the
But go
scene
ahead.
in the parlor is awesome in that
Exactly.
movie. Yeah.
Exactly. Spoiler alert, he kills Rasputin because Rasputin does really die.
Mhm.
Um, and then the movie goes into the whole reason why the Kingsman was started in the first place, and that's because these were people who lost their children during World War One and want to make sure no more wars happened. So then
Sure.
this pivots to like a melodramatic World War One movie where we're watching Ray Fiennes' son, he's doing fighting in the trenches and running through no man's land, and nothing we haven't seen before. And I was
Mhm.
like, okay, he just completely changed, did a tonal shift, and then it switches back at the end to be more like Bond like, where they're going to this. It's like a mountain plateau where there's a farm where the bad guy has everything set up, and that kind of gets back to the fun of it. So I I think because this had to set up the world of Kingsmen and they needed a motivation to start the Kingsmen, which is explained in the previous movies. Like this movie's kind of retconning everything. They had to
Mhm.
add this whole scene of Ray Fiennes' son going off to war to die. And uh, again, it took the energy out for me. And I think this movie would have been better if it was not a prequel. And it just was like a Bond like movie during World War One. It would have been more fun that way.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree. I think I think generally it's definitely better than the second one and
Okay.
different from the first.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Not as good as the first, but different from the first. And it gave me a little bit of like Indiana Jones, but an R-rated version vibe here and there.
Yes. Yeah, it still has the violence from the Kingsman movies.
Right. And that I mean, if you take Rasputin out of this movie, you have a limp noodle.
Oh,
He
yeah.
brings so much character and
Uh-huh.
attitude to what's going on that I agree. It does suffer when they eventually exit him from the movie.
My other issue is there's a mid-credit scene where you see the surviving villains meeting,
Mhm.
and they're like, "Oh, I wanna introduce you to, this new guy. He's a real up-and-comer. Have you met Adolf Hitler?" And this guy turns around, and it's supposed to be Hitler. And I don't know if in these heightened movies, if we should bring in, like, the worst butcher of atrocities in the last, century as, like, the fun bad guy.
Sure,
It
your
just
main villain.
yeah, like, I mean, unless they're going the Tarantino route of we're gonna rewrite history, I just don't
Mhm.
see a fun Kingsman where like, all right, so here's our bad guy. He's butchered 6 million Jews. Let's go kill him in a fun, stylized way. I don't see how this like tying in
Sure.
Nazis and the Holocaust. I mean, maybe they're going to take more of the Indiana Jones route, where Indiana Jones kind of ignores the whole Holocaust part of Nazis and focuses more on like the occult stuff.
Sure.
But I mean, Indiana Jones also, minus a brief appearance, doesn't make a big deal out of Hitler per se. It's more focusing on like this specific thing that some Nazis are trying to do.
Yeah.
Where Kingsman seems to look at like the broader world of things. Like
I
they're
don't
trying
think
to,
I mean, maybe they will, but I doubt they're if they make the Kingsmen, whatever. If they make a sequel to the prequel,
yeah.
I doubt it's gonna have Hitler in it. I mean,
I
that would be
I don't I mean,
hard to market for sure.
they introduced him in the mid-credits scene, so if they
Sure.
that seems to be the direction they're going, but I could be wrong.
I streamed it at home. I did not stick around, so I don't even remember that scene. I doubt I saw it. I probably assumed that it was over and shut it off.
It really is like, let me meet this guy. My name's Hitler. Oh, hi. And then it's over. That's pretty much it. So,
Sure. Interesting.
what's your number 8?
My number 8 was Men.
My number 8 is Men.
Oh, interesting. I was
Well,
I was ready to apologize for it being so low, but
no,
I'm
you do
glad
not
both
need
of
to
us-
apologize for it being so low. All right, I know
Okay,
we're going to
spoiler free and quickly.
Yeah, give me tell me why it's your number 8.
So this is the first Alex Garland movie that I've been conflicted on. Like I loved Annihilation, and I definitely love Ex Machina for sure. I love. Have you watched Devs yet? You got to watch Devs.
I liked Devs. That
Okay.
was
I like Devs
that was the
too.
right Alex Garland balance for me too.
Absolutely.
So he's
when
he's 3
when I
for
heard
3
he
for
was
me.
doing a TV show, I was like, "Why? I want more movies." And then I saw Devs, and I was like, "Oh, if he's gonna do this, then yeah, okay,
Yeah.
TV's fine." Yeah. So Men is Alex Garland, and he wrote and directed this movie that supposedly he's been working on for over a decade. And the setup is this woman who recently lost her husband. She, I think, is an author. Is she an author? I don't remember. Doesn't matter.
They go into her profession.
Yeah, she needs
She's a
to
city
get
girl.
away for a long weekend and has rented a house in the English countryside to get away from the big city and other people for, a little holiday type of thing. So she goes out there and she meets the guy who owns or runs the place. They don't really say. And he's just a little quirky, basically. And then over her course of her stay in the countryside, she meets a series of men, all of which are a little bit off, I would say. And
At
then
least a little bit off. Yeah.
and then it kind of turns into like thriller territory, thriller horror movie territory.
Yeah, it definitely goes
towards the end.
horror. Yep.
And so I knew that it was like a horror movie from Alex Garland, and I guess Ex Machina. I mean, I see Ex Machina more as a thriller than a horror movie for sure.
I agree.
Annihilation definitely has more shades of horror. What
It
with
has
the nightmare bear and stuff like that.
It has
for
horror
sure.
moments, but I wouldn't call it a horror film.
Yeah, and where it ends is not horrific for
No.
sure. You know what I mean? Like, but there along the way, there's a couple horrific things that happen, or not horrific things happen, but visuals and
Yeah.
suspense. And then at the end, it just gets like science-y weird, I guess. I don't know. That's Annihilation. But I was ready for like a straight horror movie because that's how they were marketing it. I was ready for a movie that had a little bit of commentary about men and women and men's treatment of women. I expected there to be elements of that, but I really did not expect the movie we got. That's for sure. Which
yeah.
totally makes sense. I mean, Alex Garland hasn't written and directed by him. There's not a huge body of work here. So you kind of know what you're going to get, but you don't know what you're going to get at the same time. And I was not prepared for what I got with this movie. I would say I was prepared for like the first 80% of it. And then the ending of this movie absolutely goes off the rails.
Yes. Yep.
And I haven't quite decided whether I dislike that intensely or think it's kind of cool. You know what I mean? I'm definitely leaning towards kind of cool, but also there's that little bit of me that's like, in the moment, I kind of disliked it intensely, but that might have been the point. I don't know. And they're like, to give you some spoiler free, but some feeling of how I felt was there was a guy in my theater. I saw it opening weekend.
Yeah.
And it was like, for a movie called Men, there was probably 50 people in the theater and maybe 2 women.
Okay.
It was like all dudes there to see a movie called Men. And as the movie cuts to credits, the guy 2 rows in front of me put his hands up in the air and went, "What the F?"
Did he say the F or did he say the word?
No, he said it out loud.
Okay.
He was legitimately upset that it ended that way.
Yeah.
And so I understand that sentiment. I'm not 100% sure I agree with it. But I was just baffled at what at where the movie went compared to what it seemed to be setting up. I'm also not frustrated with the movie, but kind of wish it had more definition as to some of the machinations of exactly what's going on here, which I'm sure we'll discuss in spoilers. But overall, I think my Letterboxd ranking of a 3 was probably more out of frustration than like an actual evaluation of what's there. And so I kind of feel like I need to see it again and then reevaluate, because I think it probably should be higher now that I know what it
now
is.
you know what you're yeah.
Right. How did you feel about it?
I think I feel very similar to you. I'm on the same boat on Alex Garland. Annihilation's a top 50 movie for me. I know most people prefer Ex Machina, which is still a top 100 movie for me, but Annihilation is just the right level of surreal and sci-fi and weird that hits all the buttons for me. Going in, I knew Alex Garland was not going to give me every single answer, right? You can watch Dev's Ex Machina and Annihilation, and you're not going to know exactly what's going on. There's enough open for interpretation. But at least he gives you an idea, he gives you some breadcrumbs so you can at least come up with a interpretation of what's happening. Right? You may not be what he had in mind, but you can at least kind of pull the pieces together. And my issue with Men, the movie, not the gender, is there's a lot of surreal imagery. There's a lot going on. It's obviously the commentary is pretty in your face. Like I could pick up on all that. But there wasn't that connecting thread of how is this all related to each other? Right? Like I can tell you what happened in that movie, but I can't even give you a full example of I think why it happened.
Yeah, it's kind of like 2 hours of stating the obvious in the most extreme way possible.
Right, exactly. Yep. There's also this moment. So she's right dealing with some trauma with her ex-husband. Right, we can leave it there. And there's a moment at the after she goes through like this horror show for the next 2 hours, especially those final 5 minutes, there's a moment where she is able to confront that trauma, right? Because it keeps cutting back to it cuts back to the past, and you kind of see what brought her to this place, and there's a lot left unsaid and opened. And the movie, like you said, ends, and then it kind of starts again, but within a different moment. If that makes sense, you remember what I'm talking about? Sure. And that was the moment where I was like, oh, okay, here we're gonna get maybe not answers, but we're gonna get a chance for her to grow, to confront her trauma, to have a reaction to what happened. And she doesn't do that. And I think that was a missed opportunity. And I think that's part of my frustration, part of the guy in the theater's frustration too, of like,
sure,
you could have spent 5 more minutes and given us this horror show, and then had this cathartic or emotional or some kind of moment to bring it all home. And for whatever reason, Alex Garland didn't do that. This probably, I feel like I'm maybe getting spoilery, so I apologize.
No, I don't think you're getting spoilery. I generally agree. And I don't even want to, definitely we need to get into spoilers, because I think you can compare this to one specific movie, but I think that probably gives too much away.
I agree. I think we should,
like a movie that does this better.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, I think I like the movie, but I'm still coming to terms with what that means. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I think I might even like not knowing everything about it. I might even like the last 10, 15 minutes of it. I think I'm just still in shock. That's what it was. And so it's more, I mean, I'm like 3 weeks out of seeing it at this point, and I still have not decided whether all of those things are true or just a thing I'm thinking about still, type of thing. So, yeah.
I will say I was in a bit of a bad mood during this movie, which could have colored my how I watched it, and it's actually because of what happened in the theater. So like around here I saw it pretty recently, and it was playing like in one theater at 9:40 at night. It's this movie's almost out of the theaters. So I go, and I get there, and like I have a row to myself. There's a group of 4 people in front of me, and then like 2 rows behind me, there's 2 more people. So there's, I don't know, 7 of
8
us in the whole
people.
theater, 8 people in the whole
Sure.
theater, right?
Right.
And then literally as the movie starts, this group of 4 teenage or young women, I'm not quite sure their exact age, they walk in and they sit down directly behind me, which is fine. But like they walk in talking, they're crinkling all their snacks. Like the movie's starting and they're like, "Oh, you want to sit here? Oh, should we have a seat in the middle for like full on conversation?" Okay. And I'm like, at first I'm like, okay, like I'm a little annoyed that they're doing this now, but it's fine. Let them settle in, right? Because people need to settle in. And then the talking continues of like full on conversations, not necessarily about the movie that is in front of us, just talking about whatever. And I'm like, okay, like, give them a chance here. I don't want to be that guy. But anyway, so it goes on for like 20 minutes. And like you can tell, I don't know if they knew what movie they're expecting to see. I think they wanted to see like a fun horror movie, like let's go out with the friends and giggle and scream. And this is not this movie. Right.
Sure.
So then like the commentary starts behind me. Right. And then I'm like, okay, this is not happening. And you people who listen to the podcast probably can figure, yes, I'm the guy who will say something in a theater. So at one point, like they are talking, and I just turn around. I was like, ladies, please, come on. Thank you. That's all I gave them. Right. And then I turn back around. And then you wait for like, what are they gonna do? Like,
right? Are they gonna start up again? Are they gonna amp it up now that you said something?
Are they gonna throw popcorn at me? Like, know. But it was one of those things where if I didn't say something, I was gonna be mad the whole time. Thankfully, they didn't say anything the rest of the movie. In fact, I didn't hear a peep from them the rest of the movie. So I may have ruined their girls' night.
Yeah, because old man Carl yelled at him.
Old man Carl was like, hey. But it's a movie theater, people. And I'm going to add one more thing to this. Do you know what they brought with them to the movie theater?
What?
Blankets.
What is your thing with blankets? What does it matter?
Because people who bring blankets to the theater are getting all comfortable like they're in their own house, and they're more likely to be rude. I'm not saying everyone who brings a blanket to the movie theater is a rude person, but I'm saying a rude person is more likely to have a blanket with them. Because they're in this theater, they got their big recliner, they're all cozy with their blanket, they take their shoes off, and they forget that they're in public, and they think that they're in their own private world.
I that's your experience. I wouldn't say that's my experience, but it makes logical sense. I'm just not sure anecdotally it holds up for me. Because for me, it's more likely if there's like 8 teenage or early 20s, they're going to turn on their cell phones, guaranteed. They're going to check text messages through the whole thing. That will bother me far more than somebody practically falling asleep under their blanket while they watch the movie.
No,
in my experience.
No, the blanket sleeper is fine. I'm just saying people who bring the blanket, in my experience, are more likely to be rude in the theater and not respectful of other people around them.
Sure.
Than people who don't bring the blanket.
Well, maybe Orlando blanket people are different than your blanket people up there.
I mean, I'm in the Midwest. The temperature fluctuates a lot more here. Like, you guys just go from warm to hot.
Sure.
And we go from pretty darn cold to fairly hot, so.
Yeah, but this is in the theater. People bring the blanket just because
year round because the theater are cold. Yeah.
Yeah. For sure.
Anyway.
All right.
Okay, I look forward to talking.
What did you give it on Letterboxd?
I gave it a 3-star.
Okay, so the same as what I did.
Yeah, I feel like it's a cop out because I was like, this could be a 3 because I mixed. This could be a 1.5 because this stuff really bothered me, or this could be a 4 because the Alex Garland. I mean, this is Alex Garland. The visuals are stunning.
Yeah. The
Like,
acting's great.
Yep. Yeah. This is, I
Save
guess,
for like one CGI performance, I would say.
oh, the boy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was odd.
Wasn't in love with that. We'll get into it in spoilers.
We'll get into that. Yeah.
Yep.
But I mean, Alex Garland knows how to shoot a movie.
Mhm.
I mean, Jessie Buckley, I've yet to see a movie of hers where I go above a 3-star. So I don't know.
Sure.
I don't think it's Jessie Buckley. I think it's just whatever movie she's in.
Well, you haven't seen Wild Rose yet, right?
Oh, I took that off my I was looking at my my watch list, and I'm like, what is this movie? And I took it off. That's a Jessie Buckley movie you recommended to me. Okay, it's going back
Absolutely.
on. That's why.
You should watch that. If I'm not saying it's the best she has to offer, but it's
Okay.
She's really good in it.
Yeah, I don't.
And
think,
that's one you could watch with Megan. Too.
Okay.
I think she would enjoy that.
Of the movies I've seen her in, I never have a problem with her performance. It's just for whatever reason I don't like the movie she's in. So she's not the problem, but it's maybe her agent's the problem.
I think I don't think Wild Rose will hit your top 100, but I think it will be enjoyable.
That's okay. All right, I will re-add it. I took it off. I wasn't sure why it was on there. It's going back on. Cool. All right, men spoilers. End of the episode.
2 3s for men.
Correct.
My number 7 is Some Kind of Wonderful from 1987. Have you ever seen this?
I have not.
I think I watched it because we talked rom-coms. We did like a top 10 rom-com list. And so I was trying to check off some rom-coms that have been on my watch list for a long time and a couple others that were on some, best of lists. And that's probably why I watched this. Movie stars Eric Stoltz, Mary Stuart Masterson, and Leah Thompson. Leah Thompson from Back to the Future fame.
Oh,
amongst others, right?
She's the she's the mom.
Yeah. Yep. She's the mom in the past,
and in the future.
You're right.
Same actress. She's just the mom.
Right.
Yep.
It's also in Howard the Duck and a bunch of movies that I enjoyed as a kid.
She's like 80s movies I associate her with.
Absolutely. And this one's from 87.
Yep.
So fits in perfectly. But this is like your kind of like typical high school plot where you got this high school. It's segregated by the rich kids and the working class kids. And there's this girl played by Leah Thompson who is in with the popular rich kids, even though she's technically a middle class kid.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a middle class boy at the school who has a friend who's a tomboy. And they're both kind of like the middle, lower class kids, working class kids. And the guy has a crush on the girl who hangs out with the popular rich kids. So there's a lot of like class warfare going on in this school because rich kids will not hang out with the, working class kids. And it's kind of like a romantic, that billed as a romantic comedy. It's not, a Seth Rogen comedy.
Yeah, it's not like okay.
Yeah, it's like an 87 teen, All the Right Moves, 16 Candles, Breakfast Club style romantic comedy, where people aren't necessarily telling jokes, but it does have some funny parts. It's written by John Hughes. So it does have some pedigree if you're into those types of 80s movies. And I enjoyed it well enough. It didn't make my top 10 rom-coms of all time. And I do think you probably haven't heard of it compared to 16 Candles or Breakfast Club for a reason. Like, it's just not as good as those. And the whole class warfare in high school thing was a little on the nose for me. Like, not presented as like, this is the story we're telling. It was more like, this is the lesson we're giving you. That really you shouldn't be a snobby rich kid. I was just kind of like, all right. I was over it. Anyway, my number 7.
Number 7. All right. Yeah, probably not going to watch that, but
you'll be fine going the rest of your life without it.
I think I'll be okay. Yeah.
Maybe if you go on a Leah Thompson run, then you'll slot it in. But that'd be the only reason I can imagine. Or if you wanted to watch like every John Hughes thing, I can see watching it for that. You won't hate watching it. I just don't think it's required viewing either.
I don't need to rush out and add it to the list or anything.
Right.
All right, good to know. My number 7 is a 2022 movie streaming on Netflix called Windfall. This is starring Jason Segel, Lily Collins, Jesse Plemons, Omar Leyva. There's only 4 people in this movie. It's definitely a pandemic movie. And directed by Charlie McDowell, who's both son of Malcolm McDowell and the director of The One I Love.
Oh, really?
Really? Yes.
Oh.
You're like, okay, now you're interested.
I'm interested. I'm interested in hearing what you say about it because it didn't exactly go super high on your list. So
Well, it's above Men.
sure.
That's good. Yeah. So Windfall is the story of Jason Segel plays. We don't know much about him. He's a bit of a drifter, and he breaks into the vacation home of Lily Collins and Jesse Plemons. Jesse Plemons is a tech billionaire.
Mhm.
And he's in there. He's kind of bumbling around. He's messing with stuff, maybe trying to steal money. We're not quite sure why he's there. All of a sudden, Lily Collins and Jesse Plemons come home, or they arrive at this vacation home. He was not expecting them there. So he takes them hostage, not planning to take them hostage, but sort of does. And what starts as kind of this light caper slowly devolves into a dark thriller, is kind of the best way to put it, as these 3 people are trapped in this house for this whole time. They're similar to The One I Love. There are a lot of relationship issues that come up, especially between Jesse Plemons and Lily Collins. You can imagine, the tech billionaire and the tech billionaire's wife, and what kind of issues they have and don't have, and what comes up there. And then there's also a lot of mystery over exactly who is Jason Segel and what are his motivations for being in there. Definitely a bit of a, everyman, common man versus the billionaire side of things. It does go dark a couple times, so something to keep in mind. And I think it was a fun, not a fun watch. It was a worthwhile watch. I'm glad I saw it. Like I said, it's a pandemic movie, so there's 4 people in it. It's all takes place inside a house. It's definitely on the small scale. Though I think, wasn't Men a pandemic movie also?
Yes. I
Yeah.
believe so.
Okay. So similar in that case.
I mean, they only had like 2-3 actors at a time at
right.
most,
You've got
so.
Jesse Buckley and Roy Kinnear are pretty much the only people in that movie.
Right.
It doesn't go as strange as The One I Love, nor does it kind of dive as deep as that one. This one's a little bit more what you see is what you get. But I do think I think it's worth your time. It's on Netflix. It's streaming. It's 92 minutes long. Everyone's good in it. And then I like Jason Segel a lot, and I haven't seen him in anything in a while. And he's definitely not playing the comedy role. He's playing this, this kind of dark drifter. But he's a good actor, and I do enjoy seeing him in things. So yeah. So I mean, again, if I would recommend Over Vacation Friends if you're looking for a easy thriller.
Sure. I mean, 92 minutes makes it pretty attractive.
Yeah, you're not going to be, even if you hate it, you're like, well, it's only 92 minutes that I spent on it.
Yep. As a fan of Jason Segel, have you seen The End of the Tour?
I have not. That is,
you should see that.
I should.
It's really good. And it's directed by the same guy who made The Spectacular Now. If you've seen that.
Oh, that's the Miles Teller movie? With Shailene Woodley, right?
Yep.
Okay. All right, I will add the end. Yeah, I've actually seen most of his most popular movies.
Jason Segel.
So I will add the end.
The End of the Tour is like him dramatically acting, and he's really good in it.
Yeah, he's playing the writer.
David Foster Wallace.
Thank you, David Foster Wallace. Yep. Okay. Cool. It's added, and it's under 2 hours. I like it.
Perfect. All right. My number 6 is from 2014. It's a movie titled The Deadlands, which is an action film from New Zealand.
Okay.
And it, I liked it. It's a weird one for sure. Like, it's probably its closest approximation is Apocalypto in a weird way.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, Apocalypto is better for sure, but there's these two warriors from these two separate tribes who are going against each other. Like
Uh-huh.
it's about like tribe politics and like one tribe getting up on the other. And I forget the culture, but it's set in New Zealand. They're not
Oh,
Tongans,
oh,
they're
Maori.
Maori.
Yep.
Yeah, so they're like Maori tribes, and there's a beef between these two tribes for reasons I'll let you discover in the movie.
Okay.
And over the course of the movie, there's a series of battles between these two tribes. And by battles, I mean like there's maybe like 5 or 6 guys fighting at a time.
Okay. Not like cast of
Multiple,
thousands.
right? It's not a cast of thousands. This is a relatively small budget movie from New Zealand. But the Maori warriors have interesting weapons, and it's what's that Western that came out a couple years ago with the guy from Lost in it, and also the guy from Tombstone. Why am I drawing a blank on this?
The guy from Lost.
Yeah,
Not
the
Matthew
main.
Fox.
Yeah, Matthew
Oh,
Fox.
he's been acting since Lost?
I mean, this movie came out 10 years ago, so
Oh, okay.
I don't know. I haven't seen him in anything recently. What's the name of that movie? This is gonna bother me so much.
And what's the other guy from?
It's the main guy from Tombstone.
Kurt
And-
Russell? Oh,
yeah,
Bone
Kurt-
Tomahawk? Is that who you're
Bone
thinking of?
Tomahawk. That is
Okay,
exactly
yeah.
the movie I'm
All
trying
right.
to think of. It's a little bit Bone Tomahawk. In that movie,
Okay.
you have Indians, and you're not quite sure it's historically accurate. That's
Yeah.
kind of how I feel about this. It's like some of the violence. I mean, I don't know. I wasn't there. I don't even know what Maori history is or isn't. But definitely in this movie, they're presented as very violent warriors. And it's a good action movie. I expected it to give me like a little more history or a little more, I don't know if confidence is the right word, but like I'm not confident that this gave me actual history, more that it was just like a reason to show cool looking dudes fight each other. So if you're into that, I think the movie will deliver. If you're looking for like a history lesson on the Maoris and what they're all about, I think my assumption is most of this is maybe not fictionalized, but maybe heightened
Okay.
over the course. But I enjoyed it, which is, I think I read somebody or heard somebody on a podcast recommend it for the reasons of, if you liked Apocalypto, you'll probably like this. And I was like, all right, that's good enough for me.
Oh, it's Apocalypto. Okay.
Yep. So
Very cool.
my number 6.
Your number 6. Yep. My number 6 is a 1978 movie. It's actually a remake of Invasion of the Body Snatchers called Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Sure.
So a remake of the 1956 movie. Starring Donald Sutherland, Brooke Adams, Jeff Goldblum, Veronica Cartwright, and Leonard Nimoy. Veronica Cartwright's from Alien. She's the oh god girl. If you remember who that is. Okay, yeah. So very memorable performance from Alien. So this is both this movie and the original Invasion of the Body Snatchers are pretty much the same plot. So this is a pretty straight remake. There is these alien spores have landed on Earth, and they are growing copies of people within these pods and basically replacing them with these sort of monotone, subservient copies of the person they replace. And Donald Sutherland, Brooke Adams, Jeff Goldblum, Veronica Cartwright, Leonard Nimoy, they're all investigating what's happening. They're kind of slowly realizing people aren't who they used to be, and they're trying to get to the bottom of what exactly is happening on planet Earth. And it takes place in San Francisco, and they're like, can we stop it here before it spreads across the entire world? So it's hard not to compare this to the original because they're just so close in plotting and sort of what happens. But I would say that I like this version better. For several reasons. One, the cast is much better. I mean, like I said, you got Donald Sutherland, who whenever I see Donald Sutherland in a 1970s movie, I just forget like how great he was in the 70s.
Hmm.
I mean, he's a good actor, but for some reason, like the 70s was just his sweet spot. He was able to bring it then. Brooke Adams is good as his wife. Young Jeff Goldblum, was starting out in the 70s. Veronica Cartwright's good, and then Leonard Nimoy doing not a Star Trek role was
Hmm.
all good. Um, Also, the original Invasion of the Body Snatchers has a lot of anti-communist Red Scare undertones to it. This idea that like your family could be replaced, become communists, and become these drones. And this movie kind of gets rid of all that anti-communism sentiment to it. There's a bit of a environmentalist undertone to it, but they're not trying
Hmm.
to like it's not as much of a message movie as the original is. Um, and it's got some kind of cool practical effects for the 70s, including sort of pulsating pods that we saw a year later in Alien.
Hmm.
So like, oh, did Ridley Scott watch Invasion of the Body Snatchers, or did he use the same crew? Because like there is some very similar effects between
Interesting.
some things you see in Alien and some things that you see in Invasion of the Body Snatchers. It doesn't go quite as grotesque and horror as Alien does, but a lot of like oozing plant like things that we would see
Hmm.
in Alien. So yeah, it was I wasn't it's not the best movie. I wasn't completely blown away, but I enjoyed my time with it. Um, and I mentioned that the acting is better, and there's this one point where this guy like runs up to the car that Donald Sutherland's driving and starts yelling at him like, they're coming, run away, they're coming." And I'm watching this, I'm like, "Man, who is this guy? This performance is not great." And then I read it in the trivia that it was the original actor from the 1950s version
Oh,
as a
okay.
cameo. I'm like, "Oh, well, there you go, right there." Like,
Sure.
he wasn't good in the 50s, and he's not good 20 years later. So, this movie also has you've seen the ending to this movie. You've seen a picture of the ending of this movie. We
Okay.
got we got to the or I got to the end. I'm like, "Oh, I've seen this, like this picture of this frame before."
Hmm.
So I would be curious if you were to watch it, if you're like, "Oh, I've seen that before." Or if you probably just Googled like Google image search Invasion of the Body Snatchers ending, you'll probably see a picture of Donald Sutherland and be like, "I've seen that before."
Sure. I've never seen an Invasion of the Body Snatchers movie. I think I've seen like a like remake of it under a different name, right?
Th-
Wasn't there one?
There was one with Nicole Kidman and Daniel Craig just called Invasion or The Invasion in like
Yeah,
the
I'm pretty sure
2010s.
I've seen that, but I
Okay.
haven't. I know these are like the ones that people point to, the original one and this one.
Yeah, I would skip unless you want to see like a 50s B movie.
I've
I th-
seen enough of those.
I
I'm
think you can
fine.
skip that one. I think this one
Sure.
is worth your time just because
Okay.
it's got that kind of arty 70s aesthetic with some light alien practical effects.
Right. A lot of people I like.
A lot of people you like. Yep.
Right. Right. Right.
Yep.
All right. I've put it on the list. My number 5 is a recent movie, 2022, titled Duel, spelled Dual, not
Mhm.
Duel. And this movie is strange, but good. Have you seen The Art of Self-Defense, the Jesse Eisenberg movie where he's like training? No.
I have not no.
Um, so that movie has a really weird tone to it, and this movie's made by the same guy. And so this movie also has a similar tone to The Art of Self-Defense, which is just kind of like most people
Mhm.
in the worlds that he captures are just like relatively emotionless. And so everybody kind of acts somewhat emotionless, a little bit like if Napoleon Dynamite was a straight drama instead of a comedy.
Oh
You know what I
jeez.
mean? Everybody's
Yeah.
kind of delivering lines and there's no high or no low to their voice. But Duel has a kind of future sci-fi premise where we live in a world where you can be cloned, but
Okay.
people have decided that clones are you should only clone somebody in very specific situations. Not like you should just create clones willy-nilly because that's unethical type of thing. really the only situation you should be cloned in is if you get a debilitating disease in advance and you know that you're going to pass away. You pay money to have yourself cloned, and then you spend the rest of your days on Earth teaching the clone to be you, essentially. So they'll have like all your DNA, but they don't have all your memories or your personality traits. They might have like as much of a like genetic preference for your personality traits.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, but everybody knows personality is part genetics, part environment, part experience type of thing. And so so you spend a lot of time with your clone, and then you pass away and your family doesn't have to miss you because there's a healthy version of you ready to pick up the where you left off, basically. So that's the premise. Unfortunately, occasionally things go wrong or right if you're the person who's sick.
Right.
And
yeah.
you don't die. You know what I mean? Something
Yeah.
happens and you get healed, and now you have this clone out there. Well, the law states in this universe that if there's a clone of you and the clone doesn't agree to voluntarily be destroyed, that you have you have like 6 months to train to fight them to the death. And whoever wins stays, and whoever dies, you don't have the problem of two exact same people on the planet anymore.
Yeah.
Basically.
Okay.
So it's like the Clone Rights Act, which gave clones whose person didn't die the ability to fight for their existence on the planet. So other than those elements, the world feels exactly like ours. It's just full of people that like don't emote at all because that's the style of acting that this director likes. Anyway, the movie stars Karen Gillan, who plays
Nebula.
Nebula in Guardians of the Galaxy. She's also the female in the Jumanji movies. So I like her, and I don't think I've seen a movie that's not like as heightened as Jumanji or Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
So it was fun to see her in a role where she's this woman. She's told she has a year to live. She goes and gets a clone, and then she survives. And so now she has to fight her clone. So she has no ability to fight. So she goes and gets a trainer played by Aaron Paul of Breaking Bad fame.
Oh, yeah.
And he kind of is a jujitsu, fighter guy, teacher.
Okay.
And he is basically like, I can teach you how to fight, but really I just need to teach you how to be able to kill somebody, like psychologically. Like
Right. Yeah.
You're a normal person. Not only are you gonna have to kill somebody, but you're gonna have to kill yourself in this process. And like, if you freeze up and they don't, you're done, basically. So the bulk of the movie is her training and having her double. So her clone, the people in her life like the clone more than they like her.
Oh, so they know that she's being cloned.
They know that she was cloned, and they
Okay.
know that the clone is going to take over for her when she passes away.
Okay.
And then when she doesn't pass away, she's like, okay, now we got to fight because you don't want to go back in the, back in the fire. And the family members and her boyfriend are like, actually, we like the clone. She's nicer, type of thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cruel, but okay.
So I guess I don't want to tell you the entire movie, but it's
Yeah.
definitely a dark comedy. It's very dark at times, I would say. And you have to kind of be prepared for the style of acting because it's very wooden intentionally.
Okay.
And I enjoyed it in like a weird 3.5 stars kind of way.
Yeah.
Where it was like, I like this better than The Art of Self-Defense, which also has a weird, training element to it. And The Art of Self-Defense is more about like masculinity. I don't know if you'd like The Art of Self-Defense, but it has things to say about guys that go to jujitsu places and listen to heavy metal.
Yeah. Who do I know that's like that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you're that guy, but I think you will see that guy. You know what I mean?
I'm aware of those guys, and I'm
Sure.
also aware of I'm aware of how I look on paper, like jitsu, heavy metal, like I get it.
Right, right,
So,
right.
yeah.
Um, and if you don't mind Jesse Eisenberg, The Art of Self-Defense is
Uh,
pretty interesting movie.
Just based on the trailer, Art of Self-Defense gave me Napoleon Dynamite vibes.
It's like if Napoleon Dynamite was not made by a Mormon.
Yeah, okay, so
You know what I
you kinda
mean?
mentioned that before, yeah.
Was rated R.
So, okay, I don't like Napoleon Dynamite. I do not like that movie,
I mean,
so
Napoleon Dynamite has nothing to say about masculinity, I would say.
Napoleon Dynamite has
Whereas
nothing to say.
exactly, that's what I
It's
mean.
just yeah,
Whereas both Duel
okay.
and The Art of Self-Defense, more in The Art of Self-Defense is there like a bigger message to them.
Mhm.
But these are the only two movies I've seen from this director, and I enjoyed both on some level. They didn't blow me away, but I'm interested in seeing more. So my number 5, Duel.
Did you see the Mahershala Ali Mahershala Ali movie Swan Song that came out last year?
No, I haven't seen that yet. I
So
do want to see it.
same premise.
Mhm,
Mahershala Ali has a terminal disease,
mhm,
so has a clone made of him and has to teach the clone to be him. But this is the much more philosophical version of that movie. This is the
mhm.
talking version of that movie, not the dark action version.
Dark comedy version.
Exactly. Yep.
Yep.
So, all right.
Zach would hate Duel because
Y-
he
y-
doesn't like dark comedies, and this is pretty dark.
It sounds like a world he does not want to live in.
That's exactly
And
what he
if it's
would
a
say
world he
about
doesn't
it.
want to live in, he doesn't like it.
That's
That's
exactly what he would say about it.
Yep. Yep. That is how he ranks his movies. I'm intrigued though. I would like to see Karen Gillan in it, right, in a non-heightened role. I mean, it still sounds a little heightened with the whole clone thing, but
Yeah, I mean, she's getting to play both sides. She's getting to
yep.
play kind of the depressed, sick person who's, you know, not real excited about life, and the fresh-faced clone who's a blank slate who just
Mhm.
wants to learn about everything.
Yeah.
So it's fun.
Cool.
What's your number 5?
My number 5 is a 1986 movie directed by Michael Mann. This is called
Mhm,
Manhunter. Yep, and this is the first adaptation of a Hannibal Lecter novel.
mhm,
And this movie is very hard to not compare to Silence of the Lambs because they're almost identical in presentation. And maybe that's the point of the Hannibal Lecter books is they're like, they're all kind of the same. I haven't actually read I read Hannibal, I think,
mhm,
that book. So in this, William Peterson plays a FBI investigator who is investigating a murderer. I think it's in Florida or the Florida area, who is grisly breaking into homes and killing families.
mhm,
But he's doing it on a lunar cycle, like so that he's already done it 3 times. They know his pattern. So William Peterson is trying to catch this murderer, find out who he is, before the next lunar cycle completes and the next bout of grisly murders happen.
mhm,
Um, and then you have Brian Cox, who plays Hannibal Lecter, who William Peterson visits in prison to get a psychological profile, similar to Silence of the Lambs. In
mhm,
this case, William Peterson is actually the cop who captured Hannibal Lecter, so they have their own history going back. So in this movie, William Peterson is really trying to get into the mind of a serial killer. He's like going to dark places, trying to think like a serial killer, go through his routines and his habits, in his efforts to catch him. Um, anyway, so this being a Michael Mann movie, it's super stylized. There's lots of like shots in monochromatic like blues and reds. You definitely get that kind of that slick. I don't want to call it slick 80s feel, but I don't know. You know how Michael Mann just shoots in this certain. He has a very specific color palette he uses
mhm,
in his movies, especially in the 80s, and you get it from that. And he's a good director, so you're definitely getting like that take on what's a bit of a rote thriller in this sense.
mhm,
Um, the ending is something that I didn't realize I'd seen before, because the entire ending is again, similar to Silence of the Lambs. It kind of takes place. It's a cat and mouse hunt in a house. But the whole thing is set to Iron Butterflies in Inagata Devita
Hmm.
with a lot of slow motion and it's all very stylized. But if you wanted to see a sequence set almost to the entirety, Inagata Devita is like a 17-minute long song. I don't want to say this sequence is 17 minutes long, but it's probably a good 10 minutes long. And this one song is playing the entire time. Organ solo, drum solo, you go through like the whole shebang of the song. So that part's actually, this movie is worth it just for that. But you have a strong supporting cast. I don't think William Peterson's the strongest in this movie. But you have Kim Grice playing his wife. Dennis Farina is in it playing another cop. Like I said, Brian Cox. Joan Allen is in it. She plays a blind woman, and then Tom Noonan is also in this movie, and he's really good in it too. So, yeah, very young Chris Elliott is in it,
Sure.
like playing it straight, just not hamming it up or anything. He's just in this movie.
When I look up Michael Mann on Letterboxd, you know how they show directors in rows of 4.
Yep.
So I've watched all of his. I've watched 12 movies, his top 12 movies by popularity, except for Manhunter. It's the one I haven't seen to finish
Really?
out like his first 3 rows of films. So I evidently have seen a lot of Michael Mann movies without really trying or like intentionally doing that.
Yeah. Like you see, like the
For
Keith
some
and the
reason,
Jericho Mile?
Manhunter's not in there. Like I haven't seen that one, so
Really?
I'll have to add it.
Yeah, I think it's worth watching, especially because it's Michael Mann and you get a lot of his style to it.
Sure.
And I do like that last sequence a lot.
Nice.
I think this movie wasn't this movie remade in the 2000s called Red Dragon?
I mean, I remember a movie called Red Dragon, but I didn't know it was a Manhunter remake.
I think, or maybe I shouldn't say Manhunter remake. I believe it's an adaptation of the same book. So, I have seen Red Dragon, and I remember not liking that movie. I could probably revisit it if I really want to. I'm not going to. I would say Manhunter is better.
Okay. Cool. My number 4 is a movie titled Tell No One from 2006. It's
Okay.
billed a neo-noir thriller on Wikipedia. I won't tell you who's in it because it's just a bunch of French names. The movie is in French. And it stars like this older guy who's like maybe in his, by older I mean late 40s, early 50s. Older meaning like not young leading man who
Okay.
you'd kind of expect to be in this movie. And his wife dies, and he always kind of has a feeling in the back of his head that like she didn't die the way he was told that she died, type of thing. And so the movie kind of fast forwards to a certain amount of years later. I don't remember how many. 8 years. And he still has this feeling. You know what I mean? That like he doesn't know the full truth behind her dying. And so through a series of circumstances, he becomes wanted for a crime and has to go on the run. And over the course of being on the run and trying not to be caught by the police, as amongst other people pursuing him, he decides to, or not decides, just kind of naturally unravels what happened to his wife. I am leaving out entire twists.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
Because the big lure of this movie is that it's kind of like a fugitive type thing. You know what I mean? Where it's like one man on the run, being chased by a bunch of people, finding out clues in order to solve this mystery, in order to eventually clear his name, type of thing. But I found it very effective, and the fact that it is like an older guy who's like not an action star at all, having to kind of like outsmart people whose job it is to capture him, type of thing. And having to mix with CD types in order to get things done, and just live in worlds that he never imagined himself having to live in, And then having it all kind of link back to this thing that he's suspected for a long time, even though nobody will listen to him about it. I just found it to be like a really well-made, tight thriller that you probably haven't seen from 2006.
I've
This is a
heard of it
movie
though.
I may have talked about it
Okay.
in our best of or forgotten films of 2006, possibly. Brought it up.
Oh, that
Don't
could be it.
remember.
Yeah.
Pretty sure that's why I watched it. Was just researching forgotten films from that time. And I enjoyed it. My number 4.
Oh, Kristen Scott Thomas is in it.
Yep.
She's
That's the one name I think people would recognize.
probably recognized. Yep. not Francois Couzet.
No. Although I'm sure if you're into French film, there's probably a lot of people in here that
I'm sure there are. Yeah.
Because I think this was fairly high budget French film, fairly high profile. If you're into French movies,
Right. That's probably why I heard of it. Probably had a little bit of international crossover.
Sure.
Well, my number 4 is also I guess a noir, but this is from 1945, and this is Mildred Pierce. This is directed by Michael Curtiz, who's actually a director you just recently watched a movie from.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What movie was that?
The Adventures of Robin Hood.
Oh.
Yep. Also
Okay.
director of Casablanca, White
Mhm.
Christmas, Angels Dirty Faces, and our favorite Christmas movie, We're No Angels.
Sure.
Yep. So Mildred Pierce starts like any good noir with a murder. You see
Mhm.
someone getting murdered, being shot by someone off screen. Pretty soon, Joan Crawford, who we learn is the husband of the person who was murdered, is arrested. And in the police station, she is retelling the story of how we got to this point to the police officers. Right? A lot of noirs are set up with someone telling someone else, here's the story of how we got here. So a lot told in
Mhm.
flashbacks. So this movie, it kind of flashes back to when she got married to her first husband and sort of how Joan Crawford's character, Mildred Pierce, became the woman she is. Um, Sort of through you learn about her various husbands and divorces. You learn about how she made herself went from being like a homemaker to a self-made woman. She has a daughter who is kind of a spoiled brat, and
Mhm.
no matter how successful Joan Crawford's character is, her daughter still resents her for not being successful enough, not giving her enough, even though she's buying huge mansions.
Mhm.
And you're slowly kind of piecing together this woman's life and how it all led to this night where her second husband gets murdered and how we got to this point. So it's definitely a slow burn noir. It's not like your standard, like Double Indemnity is a big one to tie to of it's kind of a fast paced moving and lots of
Mhm.
innuendo. This is not that kind of noir whatsoever. It's definitely more like we're kind of just you're slowly building this character and her family life and how we got to this point. But that's actually another interesting way, another good take on it. Uh,
Mhm.
it is a bit melodramatic. It is the 40s in this sense. So some of the acting can be a bit broad, and then like the music cues they kick in. You're like, oh, this is the scary part. Oh, this is the sad part. So like I would prepare yourself. It's obviously being a 80-year-old movie. It's made a little bit differently than now. And probably relies a little bit more heavy on the melodrama, but it definitely arrives to a satisfying point, and as a good noir, it kind of brings it all together. So it is a list movie. I think it's like now that I've watched it, I have seen all the top 50 film noirs on some list or something like that.
Interesting.
And it's also a stronger Joan Crawford performance. She's an actress who cranked out a ton of movies, and a lot of them are mediocre. But like this and Whatever Happened to Baby Jane are definitely on the stronger side for her.
Mhm. Interesting. Do you think it would be a noir that I would like, or can you think of others that probably I should watch before this?
I mean, have you seen like Sunset Boulevard?
What happens in it?
That's about a writer who gets involved with a aging silent star to try and restart their career.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
With the dead guy in the pool.
I
at
sent
the
you a
beginning.
Blu-ray of it.
You did send me. Well, I just thought maybe you didn't want to watch it. So you sent it to me.
No.
Okay.
I had seen it, and I knew you would enjoy it more than I
Yes.
did.
Oh yeah.
That's
No,
why I sent it to you.
that's a top 20 or something movie from me.
Right.
I feel like I made you a list. I think this one does not have the double indemnity rat-a-tat back and forth, which I think you did not care for.
Mm.
So yeah, this is more of a slow burn. It does have that melodrama, just to warn you about that. But I think you might like this one better because it's not trying to be so clever.
Yeah, I mean, Double Indemnity was just the exact cliche of what I thought these movies were.
Only because Double Indemnity was the first to do. Right, we
I
had the
understand.
conversation. You know why
I
it's the
understand.
cliche. Yeah,
I do. I do understand, and I respect it for that. And also, my experience was this kind of plays like Naked Gun. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. I get it. I get it. Like if you've been exposed to all the parodies and the tropes of it,
Right.
when you see the original, you're like, this is I don't get it. I don't see what's so special.
Right.
Yep, I completely understand where you're coming from on that one.
Cool. All right. My number 3 is, I guess, a movie. I don't know. This is a Netflix. According to Wikipedia, this is a documentary film called Genius: a Kanye trilogy. This is a Kanye West documentary told in 3 parts.
Okay.
Each part is an hour long, I think, or maybe a little over an hour long. So it's like 3.5 hours in total. And what's your relationship with Kanye West?
I
Don't care, hate.
I like. There's like a 3 album span of Kanye West I really like.
Sure.
Like Graduation or Homecoming, Graduation, whatever that one's called. Dark Fantasy.
Graduation, 808s, and Twisted Fantasy.
And Yeezus. Okay, there's a 4.
Okay, 4.
Yep. I like that, which is probably like his highest peak, to be honest. That's probably what most people like the most.
I think we would agree that those are the best albums that he's
Yes.
put out for sure. I like knew of Kanye West. I don't really listen to rap music all that often, so I knew of Kanye West. You couldn't like live in the culture and not absorb some of the music. I remember when Through the Wire came out, like the music video.
A long time ago, yeah.
And the mythology of like him having his mouth wired shut.
Yeah, he
then
was
I
in
remember
his accidents and yep.
Then I remember hearing in the news that his mother died after having plastic surgery. So like I was absorbing Kanye West things. I knew he was like winning awards, but I never really listened to the albums or cared until I heard Yeezus. And then I heard Yeezus and I was like, at the point in my life where I had listened to all the music I liked so much that I just wanted to hear things I had never heard before.
Yeah.
And Yeezus was like something I had never heard before. And it had like industrial elements, experimental elements to it. It's very in your face for sure. And I was like, okay, I guess I like Kanye West type of thing. And so I started listening backwards and I liked My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. I already knew a couple songs off of it, but I liked that album from beginning to end. 808s I liked, Graduation I liked, Late Registration and College Dropout. You know, it was early
good
for
ones
him.
on it. Yeah,
for sure. Life of Pablo, I couldn't tell you a single song from.
I was excited for Life of Pablo, and then it got the whole weird title release, so it was hard to listen to. And then I finally listened to it, and I wasn't like Yeezus blew me away. Dark Twisted Fantasy was, or whatever. That was my introduction, like my actual first album. I was aware of who he was, but then people were saying like this is a like legitimate best album of the year, so I started listening to then. Yeezus is weirder, but it's a bigger swing for the fences.
Yeah.
So I think I like that one even better just because it's so odd at times.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Life of Pablo, I listened to a couple times. I was like, nothing's sticking out to me on this one.
Yeah, and Ye really only has one song that I will ever listen to again.
Okay, yeah.
Jesus is King is an interesting experiment. That's his gospel album. But again, not something I have to listen to more than the 1 or 2 shots I gave it. Donda, I had one listen through, have not been motivated. So it's definitely been like a steep decline music wise as far as my preference goes. But I am fascinated by the guy and just how you. Anyway, this documentary.
Yeah.
It could be many things, right? It
Mhm.
could be a puff piece. It could be just kind of a standard telling of who Kanye is and his filmography and kind of like a history lesson on him. Turns out it's not any of those things, and it's he has this not childhood friend. When he's like in his early 20s, he meets this guy who in the mid 90s has a video camera and just wants to film artists and like put together music videos, for the really low budget music videos for people with, no money basically. And he meets Kanye before Kanye's famous. Kanye's a producer who's starting to get steam, and so this guy starts following him around with a video camera and continues to follow him around through him releasing his first album as a rapper. So you learn that like Kanye kind of goes from like a kid from Chicago who nobody pays any attention to a guy who works his way all the way up through Rockefeller Records, gets a record contract with them, like does a ton of producing for big artists, including Jay-Z, and then eventually gets a record deal with them. And then you hang out with him while he's putting together The College Dropout. The guy who's filming him also directed the Through the Wire music video, which if you remember that video, it's like a board, like a have you ever seen
like a bulletin board? Yeah,
it's a bulletin board and it like moves from one memory to another on the bulletin board.
I remember that video.
So
yeah.
all of those video clips were from that guy's library of Kanye footage.
Okay. Yeah.
So he puts together kind of the music video that blows him up a little bit after The College Dropout comes out. And so now they're like on a totally different level. Like both of these guys now have gone from like kids that nobody ever really listened to like he made the music video that blew up Kanye. Kanye is no longer just a producer. He's kind of becoming a superstar on his own right. And so they lose touch a little bit for like 15 years or something like that. Maybe not 15 because College Dropout was 2004. For a good deal of time, he stops following around Kanye on a daily basis with a video camera. Those are like the graduation through Yeezus, yay years.
Yeah.
Type of thing where there's like this. The first episode is all like before he got College Dropout made. Then the second episode is like the craziness of him trying to get College Dropout released and like his star shooting after that. And then the last episode is like Kanye's having a full-blown mental health breakdown in front of the world on his Twitter account. And he's in this high-profile marriage with multiple kids, and he starts filming with them again. So it's all like new footage.
Yeah.
In the last episode, and it's very raw, which is interesting because Kanye produced the documentary. I mean, he's the type of person who I don't think he cares what anybody thinks about him at this point. So maybe that's why he doesn't care what's in it, but it definitely makes him look like a troubled person in the end. But it's interesting to watch the whole sequence and then have it skip when most people stopped liking Kanye. You know what I mean? Because of his like tabloid presence.
His presence
completely skips that. And so you see a guy who's mentally there. You know what I mean? Who's just a driven, creative person. And then all of a sudden there's this big chunk of his life cut out. And now you're seeing him in his 40s. He's no longer as commercially successful as a music artist, but fashion, he's making way more money than he ever did in music. And he has a bunch of mental health issues. I just found it really interesting and really well made, and it's 99% in the moment footage, And the first 2 episodes are like footage that only friends film each other in that way. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like they filmed it because that guy filmed everything. And so I feel like you get a as pure representation of who Kanye West was during those early years, as I could imagine you could get of any artist. Anyway, I just found it very interesting. And if you have any interest in Kanye West, or if you ever have and you got sick of him, I think it might be worth at least watching the first episode and deciding whether you want to continue with it.
I skipped this because I thought it was gonna be a puff piece for him.
Yeah.
So
I thought it was too. And then I heard other people
yeah.
talking about it, and I was like, all right, I'll try it.
So yeah, but based on what you're telling me, obviously it's not. So yeah, I mean when he was doing Dark Twisted Fantasy and Yeezus, I was like, this guy is a genius and one of the most talented musicians of our time.
Sure.
And then, I even though I didn't like the other post things, like, okay, I'm like, fine. It's just 'cause I don't like it doesn't mean I don't like him. But then the tabloid stuff and the politics, I was like, oh, maybe I don't like this guy anymore based
Yeah, I
on
mean,
who he was.
yeah, I have a hard time
in
with
public.
lots of artists in this way, in that like the tabloid stuff has nothing to do with listening to the albums. I mean, they're
Yeah,
like
I know.
they're made completely in different time periods. And so it's, but we have the same problem with like Me Too guys. You know what I mean? Where it's like, where does the artist end and supporting the, madness begin?
Yeah,
type
like
of thing.
where's your line? Yep.
Right.
Well,
exactly.
wherever my line is, Kanye West crossed it for me. So
Yeah, I think he did for me too, from like an exposure standpoint. But then like the last episode or the last hour of this, I don't think it's intended to make him sympathetic, but it made me sympathetic towards like, oh, he's not just a maniac. I think he literally needs to be medicated.
Oh,
You know what I mean?
he needs some help.
Right. It's not, I don't think it's just an ego out of control. I think it's a chemical imbalance at this point.
Yeah.
So anyway, my number 3.
Cool. All right. Well, I might check that one out. My number 3 is a 2022 movie directed by Richard Linklater, and this is Apollo 10.5: A Space Age Childhood.
Nice. I know about this. I'm curious to hear your opinion on it.
All right, yeah. This is a semi-autobiographical movie by Linklater. It's about a boy who grew up in Houston in the late 60s during the time of the Apollo program. And Richard Linklater is a boy who grew up in Houston in the late 60s during the time of the Apollo program. So it's very much kind of a retrospective on his life. And it's kind of 2 movies in one, but it worked for me. Half the movie is about this boy who's narrated by Jack Black, who kind of imagines that he's being recruited for the Apollo program. Like they have to recruit kids, and the whole joke is they made the lunar lander too small. Only kids can fit in it. So he gets recruited to be in the Apollo program. He goes through all the training, and he eventually gets to go to the moon. So it's kind of like this kid imagining going to the moon while watching the actual lead up to the moon on TV. And then the other half of this movie is just sort of like hey, being a kid in the 60s was kind of crazy pastiche, which feels cliche because it's like we had this and we could do this and we stayed out on our bikes, but because it's told not from like a hey, remember when kids in the 60s could do this? It was told from like a hey, remember when I was in the 60s and I did this? It just felt a little bit more personal. The fact that there's that a good chunk of this movie is a bit of a nostalgia trip. I'm sure for some people it may not work because they're like, okay, they're just ticking off all the things about the 60s, but because you see it through the eyes of this 10-year-old boy, it feels a little fresher. Right? Like he's learning about rock and roll in Vietnam, but as a 10-year-old who's not quite into those things yet. So like he gets glimpses of Vietnam on the TV, and his older sister listens to rock and roll, but he's not into all that kind of stuff. So it's just, it's because it's a different take on the nostalgia, and it worked for me. I watched this movie with my parents, who were a little older than this boy was at the time, but they were teenagers when this all happened, so they were enjoying the kind of the nostalgia look back at it. So they thought it was a really fun movie. But on top of that, this whole thing is rotoscoped.
Hmm.
So it's animated. It's not it's in rotoscope animation. I've said this before, but that's where you film actors and then you animate their movements and then you can do whatever you want with the backgrounds behind them and you can add things to it. So even though for most of the scenes Linklater doesn't do a ton with rotoscope, if his kids just like ride around bicycles, there's nothing a lot there. But then when he gets to like the more lunar training and that stuff, he has a little bit more fun with the rotoscoping. I like rotoscoping. I think it's just a really interesting way of doing animation. It For some people, rotoscoping approaches the uncanny valley because you have animated characters who move like fluid humans. But for me, it's just it's a style choice that I think looks interesting to watch, and I enjoy seeing kind of these fluid animated characters interacting with their world. And you don't know how much of this they could film this all in a blank studio and then drawn in everything behind them. So it's one of those things where you have no idea what you're watching was there versus what was added later.
Mhm.
So
And
that's why.
Linklater, this is like his third rotoscope movie, right?
Yeah, because he's done Scanner Darkly and what's the documentary he did?
Yeah, there's another one,
Waking Life.
Waking Life.
Yeah, so this is his third attempt at, or not even attempt. He's been successful both other times. So this is his
Waking
third
Life
go
is a
around.
documentary. I've never seen Waking Life, so
It's a it's it's like a half documentary, half narrative. There are rotoscope talking heads. Alex Jones is interviewed in Waking Life.
what?
Yeah, but this is like before he was that Alex Jones.
Really
Yeah, this is when he was like an underground radio guy.
weird.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird to watch it because that movie was made in the 2000s.
hmm
So it's weird to watch it now and like they're talking to Alex Jones and giving him a mouthpiece and he's actually saying things. And you're like,
He's actually
what?
saying things that
Yeah.
make sense and aren't
It-
like insane,
I mean, it's still a little insane what he's saying,
right?
but it's not like Alex Jones insane. And it's something where at the time he's like, oh, here's just a guy with some kooky ideas. They're
It's
not like
not. It's not. They're making the frogs gay type stuff.
right. He's not going InfoWars in that.
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah. I'm not defending Alex Jones whatsoever, but it's a milder version of that man.
Sounds like you're a big fan.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's all I listen to. It's jujitsu, heavy metal, and Alex Jones 24/7.
Nice.
Yeah. So I could easily see people watch this movie and being like, oh, this is just a 45-minute nostalgia trip in the middle.
Right.
It worked for me, maybe because my parents were there who were alive during that period and were enjoying that nostalgia trip too, but
Sure.
it worked.
I want to have seen all the Richard Linklater movies, so I was going to see this eventually anyway. But you're the only person I know who's watched it.
It's on Netflix. It's 98 minutes and it's a lot of Jack Black narrating. So,
Oh,
yeah.
nice. My number 2, which is a movie that I really like, but is only for a small subset of people, I imagine, is a 2021 drama titled Mass. Mass. This movie kind of made the rounds in the lead up to the Oscars this year, as like a potential movie that could be nominated for Oscars. And I think one of the somebody got a maybe there weren't any accolades. Let's see. Nope. No Academy Award nominations, but
Yeah.
it won awards from like every Critics' Choice type of place, and I think there were some BAFTA nominations. Yeah, it was just one of the movies that was winning awards, and so it could have possibly been in the talk for the Academy Awards. Anyway, Academy Awards came and went, and then I decided to watch it anyway. And it's about a fairly timely event to what we're talking about right now.
Yeah.
It's a school shooting movie, but it's a school shooting movie that has nothing to directly do with the shooting itself. It's a school shooting movie where two sets of parents decide that they're going to meet in a church meeting room 6 years after a school shooting happened. And one of the parents are the parents of a student, an innocent student that was killed, and the other set of parents were the parents of the shooter.
Oh.
And it's like the shooter killed I don't remember how many kids he killed, but more than just their kid. You know what I mean? It wasn't like a vendetta kill.
It was a
like
mass shooting.
It was a mass shooting.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. So it's 6 years after. And there's no flashback. There's no like showing of kids dying or anything. It's just, what would a conversation between these two sets of parents be like 6 years after, type of thing. And so it's entirely fictional. It's not based on a specific shooting or a meeting that actually happened, but it's pure acting, right? You've got these 4 actors sitting in a room across a table from each other for like an hour and a half and talking their way through the event itself and what happened in the last 6 years to them. And like the family of the kid who was killed, those parents have been advocating for gun control and have become very political type of people, whereas before this happened, they weren't. And the parents of the shooter, have obviously been destroyed. You know what I mean?
Of course.
Their entire world changed in one day, and they've second guessed their entire, adult lives with their child. Basically, they've second guessed whether they themselves are evil for producing something that's evil, type of thing. And so there's a lot of confusion and animosity, and they've only so far kind of talked to each other in the press. You know what I mean? They've sniped at each other in the press. And so somebody in their life has facilitated this meeting and thinks it will be, I don't know, cathartic, helpful for them to actually speak to each other instead of just snipe at each other in the press. And so the reason why you should watch this is because I think it depicts a realistic possibility of what the fallout from a mass shooting that happened 6 years ago might be, and what the feelings of people who are tangentially involved in those things might feel years on when the culture has moved on, but yet you're left picking up the pieces. I thought that was an interesting perspective, and not one that's typically told with movies that are related to mass shootings. And I also think if you're just a fan of like really good acting, this is the movie for you. It's 4 people just acting their butt off for an hour and a half on a topic that's pretty tough to swallow. I'm glad I watched this before the Uvalde
probably
shooting happened. I'm not sure people are ready to jump right into this, but if somewhere down the line you get the chance to watch it, I definitely recommend it for those reasons. My number 2.
I don't know if I want to watch that.
It's okay.
Yeah, I mean, we watched Polytechnique to finish the Denis Villeneuve filmography, and that's another movie about a school shooting where they depict it, which is pretty rough.
Yeah, that's really rough. This is rough in a totally different way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like it's totally different. It's similar but different. You'll never see anybody get shot in this. You know what I mean? It's all parental anguish.
Well, and see, I think that's what it plays on. I mean, I'm a parent. You're a parent. I'm a parent. Zach's a parent. I'm a parent of 6-year-olds. Your kid has made it through teenage. Your kid's an adult now,
right?
So I'm sure a lot of your parental anguish, not about like, are they going to become a school shooter, just in general, of like, okay, my kid survived teenage years, and
sure,
but like I definitely, something that I do not look forward to is when my child becomes a middle schooler and starts having to deal with hormones and angst and all that. And,
sure.
Not that, but so I think any movie about parental anguish seems a little triggering for me.
No, I mean, it's two sides of everybody's worst nightmare.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, your kid dies in a mass shooting, or your kid's the shooter.
Yeah.
I mean, is certainly, you'd probably, if you had to choose,
If I had to
not want your kid to be the killer.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like it's the same result.
Right. Yeah. It's terrible. It's terrible either
Yeah.
way. So
For sure.
I don't. It sounds intriguing. I don't know if that's something I could personally.
I don't think anybody should watch it unless they want to.
Yeah.
I don't think you'll like it unless you
No
want to watch
required viewing. Good to know. I do remember hearing about that though. So that's the little buzz around it.
Mhm.
All right. My number 2 is another noir because I love noirs, and this is Body Heat from 1981. This is directed by Lawrence Kasdan of Star Wars fame, amongst other things.
Mhm.
And starring William Hurt, Kathleen Turner, Richard Crenna, and Ted Danson. Mickey Rourke is credited too. I do not remember him in this movie whatsoever. I do remember him in this movie now. Okay. Yeah, he has a small role.
Okay.
This movie it's essentially, I don't say essentially. This movie is very similar to Double Indemnity. It has the same setup of William Hurt is this 30-year-old single playboy, and he meets Kathleen Turner one day. This takes place in Florida. It's during a heat wave. It's very hot down there, or down where you are in this case. I want to say it's like Tampa area, or maybe just north of Miami. What's like north of Miami? Any big
North of
cities?
Miami, Fort Lauderdale.
Maybe it's Fort. Yeah, it's somewhere. They're outside Miami. So he's a lawyer, and he meets Kathleen Turner one day, like at a boardwalk or something, and they kind of have a bit of a Double Indemnity back and forth conversation.
Mhm.
And he is allured by her, but learns that she's married. Nothing can happen there. He's kind of like, yeah, what's the big deal?
Mhm.
Through a couple other meetings, they eventually start an affair. They fall in love, and soon they're talking about killing her husband and making off with some money
Mhm.
to continue their life together. Again,
Sure.
very similar to Double Indemnity.
Mhm.
So this has similar setup. Where this movie is different than a noir of the 40s, whereas Double Indemnity, they couldn't show you anything. It was all innuendo, or it was all like, here's a character smoking a cigarette, buttoning their shirt up. That means they must have had sex the night before. This being the early 80s, they're going to show you the sex.
Mhm.
Right. So it's not, I don't think it's anything graphic by our standards now. It's obviously not pornographic, but it was definitely on the more graphic side for the early 80s because people didn't show sex scenes on screen, and especially
Mhm.
sex scenes with naked bodies. So you're getting both the kind of the setup of the noir and all of that story around it, but then you're also getting, you're actually seeing the passion of this affair. Whereas everything was implied in the 40s, now like you hear these people having a passionate affair. Here is the actual passionate affair that we're talking about.
Hmm.
Kathleen Turner she is like my she's my Charlize Theron of the 80s.
Sure.
Yeah, I love everything that she's in. She definitely she reminds me of Lauren Bacall, who's not in Double Indemnity, but she was in noirs in the 40s. Both
Mhm.
in her look and her huskier voice. There's a lot of similarities there. William Hurt, I think this is one of his first movies. It's definitely her first movie, so they're kind of new actors to the scene. William Hurt's another favorite actor of mine, so he works for this. And it's got its own twists and turns. I would say if you've seen Double Indemnity, that's not going to ruin this movie for you. They're not exactly the same,
Mhm.
but they're definitely very similar setups. Coincidentally, I saw this movie, and then a week later, You Must Remember This podcast. Are you familiar with that one?
I
With
do
Karina?
know of it.
Okay.
Yes.
Started her new series, and this series is called Erotic 80s, where they're focusing on how sex was brought into movies in the
Mhm.
1980s, and Body Heat was one that they talked a lot about. So it was kind of interesting to watch Body Heat, and then 2 weeks later, here's a podcast talking about how drawing the connections from Double Indemnity to this movie right here.
Sure. I can't listen to that podcast.
Is it her voice?
It's
And why are you so sexist?
I know.
No, it is not. No, it's
No,
I know, it's not
honestly, I do think there's an element to that. I don't like her style of speaking. It's very like sarcastically know-it-all in my mind.
I don't think that's intentional, but
I think that's just who she is.
There's a flatness.
Right.
Like it should be like Lauren Bacall in the 40s was like she's kind of draws out her syllables or her vowels a little bit. I can see where it comes across as like, of course I know this. Why don't you know this?
And not only that, but do you want to hear my Karina Longworth story?
I think you've told this story. I think we've actually had this conversation like very recently.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did we go into why I actually don't like her?
We did.
I
honestly don't remember the story, but I know you've told it. So.
Sure.
Had to do Twitter, right? Was it a Twitter thing?
No, it was a website.
It was a website thing. Okay. I knew it was an internet thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Back in the day, I used to run a movie news website that had a little bit of popularity. Not a lot, but a little bit. And a website that she used to work for wronged me. And she was involved.
She was involved.
Ever since then, I haven't. Then she started a podcast years later, and it blew up. And now she's married to Ryan Johnson.
Yes, that's right.
So who won in the end? I think me.
I mean, you have a podcast.
Sure. I don't have. You must remember this. That's for sure.
No.
I think you must remember this got bought, right, by like Spotify or something. It's got like heavy backing now.
I think. Yeah, I'm not sure
somebody
who owns
else,
it, but it's doing well.
Yeah.
Yep.
Anyway,
yeah, it's my number 2. Body Heat. If
Body Heat is I'm pretty sure I've seen Body Heat.
I mean, it's a classic. Yes. Yeah.
It's a classic erotic thriller.
Yeah, that's true. I guess that's a term I did not use, but erotic thriller.
Right.
But this is this one kind of kicked it off, and I think it's much better. I've seen, not fair share, but I've seen a couple, 80s, early 90s erotic thrillers, and this is definitely the strongest of them all, because this is the one that's still trying to keep with the noir themes and adding the eroticism, whereas you get farther down, they're like, let's just make it more erotic.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, my number 1 on this top 10 last 10, my favorite movie that I've seen out of the last 10 is a 5-star movie for me.
Oh.
It's on Netflix. It's a 2022 movie, and it's called RRR.
I've heard of this. Yeah.
This movie is so much fun, Kyle.
Okay.
It's so I don't know. I just had a lot of fun with it. It's probably not a 5, but my in the moment ranking was 5. Probably because in retrospect, it's a little long. It's like 3 hours long, and they probably could have cut half an hour out of it, and it would have been I would have felt the same about it, basically. But it's an Indian movie. I'm gonna get all this very wrong, I'm sure.
I believe you're right.
Indian. It's an Indian movie, but with the Telugu language, which evidently is different than your typical Bollywood style language.
There's like 4 languages. Like often, Bollywood movies are usually recorded in one language, but have 4 different language releases because there's just different languages spoken across the country.
Right.
It's not like
but evidently Telugu is not the one that's the primary language typically.
Okay. So it's a big deal that it's in that language.
Supposedly.
Okay.
I don't know. It's not a big deal to me. It's all words at the bottom of the screen to me. So and it's like an epic historical adventure film that fictionalized 2 real people, essentially 2 real mythological heroes of Indian Telugu history. Probably mispronouncing that too.
That's probably you're fine.
two guys that I had never heard of. I'm sure you've never heard of them. I think most people have never heard of them. And it's basically like these two guys who are on opposite sides. They're both Indian / Telugu. But I'm just going to say Indian from now on because
That's fair. Yeah.
I don't know. And one of them is, so the British have invaded India and they're like exerting their control over this part of India. And in the 1920s, there's a lot of like colonialism going on and stuff like that in India. And the British, as depicted in this movie, feel very superior to the Indian people and are putting their boot on their neck type of stuff, mistreating them. And some Indians are actually working with the British. Like the two main actors in this movie, the one main actor is like actually with the British and like a part of their military and trying to assimilate, I would say. And this other guy is just kind of like this warrior that has been tasked with like a little girl gets kidnapped in the beginning by the British, and he gets tasked by his village to like go get the girl back from the British. Meanwhile, the British have all the money, they have all the firepower, they have all the resources.
Yep.
So this guy who's been tasked with this is just like this really badass warrior. And the Indian who's working with the British is also a badass warrior. And so in order to take down one badass warrior, you get your own badass warrior and then they battle. And this movie is like these two guys who are actual enemies, but they don't realize it through the bulk of the movie, and they become friends. And one guy doesn't realize the other guy's a police officer, and the other guy doesn't realize that this is the guy he's after. And so like the first half of the movie is like this perfect bromance between these two guys. And it's just such a fun movie with tons of action and just absolute CGI ridiculousness. Like the CGI in this movie, there's a lot of CGI going on, a lot of wire work. It's like a weird mix between like a Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon type movie where like both of these guys are just so good at fighting that they can literally like jump up a 10-foot wall without climbing it. Like they can literally just leap up it. And they fight lions barehanded. CGI lions, but lions nonetheless. Stuff like that. Just like heightened ridiculousness. Then like about an hour into the movie, there's the first dancing and singing scene. It involves these two guys like at a party, the two bromance guys, and they do this dance sequence where they're like battling each other to see who can dance the longest.
Okay.
But they're doing dance moves with their suspenders that are like, I don't think I've had so much fun watching a movie at home alone in a long time. It was like just pure joy watching this scene unfold.
That scene's going around Twitter. I haven't watched it, but I've seen people reference that and like it was like the suspender dance. I know, yeah.
It was nuts and so much fun to watch. Like the inventiveness, I think, and the joy in which it's presented is infectious, or at least it was to me. And it's kind of like how we used to treat Sylvester Stallone. You know what I mean? Just kind of like when Sylvester Stallone came on screen in the 80s, when I saw Rambo 3, people cheered. They were excited to see the muscle guy who's now going to go through the rest of the movie and be awesome. And that's what this movie felt like to me, kind of a return to that kind of form. It is fairly violent, but it like moves past violence pretty fast. It's kind of bloody, but it like never shows anybody getting an open wound or anything. It's just all of a sudden they have blood on them. It's weird, but super fun and fast, and like no American movie I've seen. The movie was made for $5.5 million, and it is shocking what they do for that amount of money.
Is it because they don't need to pay people, or is it because they pay people differently, or is it just?
I think it's just way cheaper
to make movies.
It's just way cheaper, but they're making like this movie is on par with your B-level theater releases.
There's probably some downsides. Like I'm sure, like the production safety codes aren't as, like there's partially the reason why our movies are so expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. This movie starts with a disclaimer that no animals were harmed during the filming of the movie, because there are multiple sequences where he kills animals, wrestles them. The animals are used as weapons, stuff like that. And I'm wondering if that's because maybe Bollywood films in the past haven't been quite as careful.
Yeah. Or do you think it's they did harm animals, so they had to they're like, no, they're fine.
I don't think Netflix would have bought it if that
Okay,
was the
that's good. All right.
reputation.
Okay.
Yeah. Netflix bought it. There's a clip going around that I think I retweeted on the Cinereelist account that is of a theater, and there's like a guy comes on screen and there's a bunch of people who cheer in the theater, and they literally light fireworks inside the theater to celebrate the guy appearing on screen. Have you
Yes,
seen this?
I saw that.
That's from RRR.
That whole scene's from RRR, or that theater's watching RRR?
That theater is watching RRR.
And they lit fireworks in the
Yes.
theater.
They lit fireworks in the theater and went nuts. Yeah. If you have 3 hours to spare, even if you split it up over 2 nights, there's definitely an hour and a half point that I don't even have to tell you what it is. It's unmistakable that that's the first half, and now you're going into the second half. So if you had to split it up into 2 nights, I would understand. But I watched it in one. I was
about to ask you if you watched it one or not.
Yeah. My number one.
Megan studied in Calcutta for 6 months in college.
Mm-hmm.
And she went to a couple movies in the theater, and she said it's crazy. It's nothing like seeing movies here.
You'd probably be really annoyed.
I'd be shushing everyone around me. Yeah, I mean, she's like, there are people carrying full conversations, eating full meals, kids in the aisles, people up on stage. It's a cultural difference, obviously. So
if they like something, they stand up and applaud it.
Right, exactly.
In the middle of the movie.
Yeah. I'd be like, you all gotta be quiet. I got 4 more hours of this to go. It wouldn't work for me. So, but I think as experience, it'd be fun. Just knowing this could be a different kind of experience.
For sure.
So, yep.
What's your number one?
My number one is, I think, a movie I've actually mentioned a couple times, but I haven't really a chance to talk a ton on it. So I want to throw it on here.
Okay.
This is a Oscar-nominated movie. I think it was nominated for Best Documentary and Best Animated Feature. Didn't win either. And this is 2021's Flea.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a documentary about a man who grew up in Afghanistan in the early 80s during the Soviet. Oh, no, first he was there during the Soviet occupation, and then he was there when the Taliban took over. So he saw that transition. And once he saw what was happening, and this, we're talking like a boy, like a 10-year-old boy.
Mm-hmm.
Once he saw what was happening with the Taliban, he and his family attempt to escape Afghanistan, and are basically have to be smuggled out independently of each other. It's a pretty harrowing tale of him trying to escape Afghanistan through a ring of smugglers, because that's the only way you could get out.
Sure.
At the same time, he's also a young gay boy who is definitely not an accepted person amongst the Taliban in the 80s. So that there's that wrinkle to.
He wouldn't be today.
Right, even now, but true, the Taliban's back. So
Right.
yeah. So this whole documentary is told. It is the. I believe Amin is now the man. Amin is telling his friend, who's a documentary filmmaker, about his experience and kind of sharing it for the first time. And we even learned that Amin's friends and family in the United States don't really know about his history, don't know about him leaving the country and being like everything he went through. So this is sort of his way of opening up to his friends and family about like this is my actual experience. This is what I went through. This movie's also rotoscoped, just like Apollo 10.5. And I believe part of the reason it's rotoscoped is because they filmed the subjects involved, and then the subjects wanted some anonymity. So then
Okay.
I think rotoscoping was part of the reason, because that way we could kind of change faces.
Mhm.
I also, it's dubbed. I believe Riz Ahmed does the voice of Amin. I'm
Hmm.
looking at the cast, and I think the cast is all original. So much for
It's
anonymity.
only dubbed, or it has a dubbed version.
The version that's on, I saw it on Hulu. The version on
Mhm.
Hulu is dubbed by American actors
Mhm.
or English speaking actors like Riz Ahmed. But since it's all animated, the dub is fine. It's not like you're not. It doesn't. It all works.
The mouth doesn't have to fit the
Yeah,
words perfectly.
because I
Sure.
believe the subjects are speaking English.
Mhm.
They just are changing the voices too.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So yeah, it's I mean, documentaries at their best teach you about something you don't know, bring you into a
Mhm.
world you're unaware of. And in this case, you're brought into this world of how do you flee from a autocratic government that, would murder you if they learned more about who you were. And so it's a
Mhm.
pretty harrowing tale in that sense. But a fascinating one. And a movie that I think I picked a lot as to win a lot of categories. I don't believe it won a single Oscar.
Hmm.
But it definitely what won best Oscar for best animated picture? Was
Mm.
it Mitchell's versus Machines, or was there another?
I don't feel like it was Mitchell's versus the Machines.
Okay. Also, yeah, what won best documentary? Because this was up for both of them. I just
I
don't
don't
remember.
remember.
Yeah.
Really
And
was not that long ago.
no, but it's interesting. Like besides best picture and maybe some acting, how fast you forget who won every hat. Like I spend so much time tracking the Oscars, who's gonna win, and they announce winners. I just so quickly forget who won what.
For sure. It definitely is something that matters in the moment and then
Right.
doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
Okay, so the question was who won best documentary?
Yeah, both best documentary and best animated feature.
Best documentary went to Summer of Soul.
Oh, okay. Not so mad. Oh, that's right. Of course. How could I forget? That was all the Chris Rock, Will Smith stuff was going down at that moment.
Right. What
How
was
could I
the
forget?
other question? Documentary and feature?
Best animated feature. Okay, so Summer of Soul, I like
Animated feature went to Encanto.
Encanto. That's right. Okay. Okay. Summer of Soul, I'm fine with Flea losing to, because that was a great documentary.
Mhm.
I do think Flea is a better animated film than Encanto, but I understand why Encanto won. That doesn't bother me.
Sure.
This is streaming on Hulu, and I would definitely check it out as both a prestige film and a just maybe a movie in 2021 a lot of people missed.
Okay. Nice. It's definitely already high on my list. I will watch it here very soon.
Yeah. Okay.
Have you seen The Tower?
I have not seen The Tower.
I think you would like that. It's the only reason it's related is because it's a documentary and it also has rotoscoped elements.
2012, 2018,
Probably
1985.
2018.
2018 looks animated from the
It might,
poster.
yeah. Yeah.
11.
Is it about a shooter at a college? Why are we talking so much about school shootings?
Oh, this one looks like it's puppet animation. 11-year-old Wardy's great grandfather leaves behind a will suggesting looking to the past to find the future.
No.
Nope,
It's
this is
not.
okay. This is not it. So not 2018. Let's look at 2012.
This is a 2016 movie. It's not The Tower, it's just Tower.
Oh, okay. I looked for The Tower. That would be why.
Yeah. 2016, mostly animated documentary about the 1966 shootings at the University of Texas.
Oh, I've heard of this. Yes. I'm
there was
interested in this one.
there was actual footage
Mhm.
from the event because there were like news people that got there quickly, like as it was happening. And so, but the news footage is incomplete as an experience.
Yeah.
So they took the news footage of like, you know, news camera guys running and gunning around the campus as the shooter's shooting from a tower.
Mhm.
And since they animated it, they were able to fill in the gaps where the news footage didn't
Oh,
exist.
okay. Yeah.
So it's kind of giving you a first person experience at times in the documentary, but it's hard to tell what's actual footage and what they invented.
Mhm.
But it's good.
But the invented footage is just filling in the gaps. They're not making things up.
No, they're not
Yeah.
making things up, and they're supporting the parts that they're filling in the gaps on
Mhm.
by the accounts of people who were there, because 1966 was a while ago, but most of the college students from 1966 were still alive when they made the documentary.
Yep.
So
Okay.
at least the ones that survived it.
Yeah.
Because
It's
it was pretty bad. In retrospect, not as bad as we could get, but it was pretty bad for the time.
It was
that's for
19.
sure.
Yeah. It means here we go. Mass shootings, even
I know. We're back at it.
60 years ago, still. It's an American tradition.
Sure. Well, at least back then it only happened like once every couple of years.
And there weren't automatic weapons. We're going down a rabbit hole with this
All right,
one.
this is
Okay.
depressing.
This
It's
is-
far
this
too
is
late to be
evolving.
this depressing.
Way too much shooter talk on this top 10 last 10.
For sure. Well, thank you for listening to this episode of the Cinereelists. We appreciate your listenership. It's always fun to do a top 10, last 10 with you, Kyle. That was awesome. If you have your own top 10, last 10 that you'd like to share with us, we're always curious about those things. What you guys are watching, what you liked, what you didn't like. That's an easy way to deliver us that information. You can send us an email to heyguys@cinereelists.com. You could also find us on YouTube. You could support us on Patreon. You could leave us an Apple Podcast review, or you could find us on social media on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok at Cinereelists. Or you could find me on my personal Twitter or Letterboxd account at YoJRB.
You can find me on Letterboxd at Peter SKB.
Not sure what we're going to talk about next week, but I'm sure it'll be awesome.
It always is.
We'll see you guys there. Until then, keep it cinereal.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.
This is spoilers for Alex Garland's Men. If you have not seen the movie and you want to avoid spoilers, then you should hit pause now and come back to this. If you have not seen the movie and don't care, or you've seen the movie and you want to hear it discussed openly, listen on. So, I kind of feel like there's 3 scenarios going on here in Men.
Okay.
One, it's just not supposed to be taken literal at all, and from the moment she picks the fruit off the tree, a la Adam and Eve,
Mm-hmm.
everything from then on is just a complete fantasy playing out. Basically, it's like Alex Garland's version of how awful um, men are in the pursuit of getting women. You know what I mean? I would say,
Yeah,
or
it's just how
controlling
awful men are to
controlling
women in
women.
general. Yep.
Right, for
Yep.
sure.
Yep.
Then there's the other one that she is kind of just in this like halfway zone where it was interesting to note that like she never seemed to realize that all the men were played by the same actor.
Yeah, I mean that's really interesting. Rory Kinnear, who plays the housekeeper, then you realize every man she encounters is
Is
played by
him.
him,
Yeah.
including, as you mentioned before, this CGI this 13-year-old boy with his face CGI'd on, which was
Right.
upsetting, but not in a horror kind of upsetting, just in a uncanny valley.
For sure.
Yeah.
That was my issue with it, was the uncanny valley stuff.
Yep. Yep.
I understood why it had to be him. I just
I-
wish they could have done a better job.
Yeah, well,
with
it wasn't a great face swap. Yeah.
I think I mean I don't know if I'm sure it wasn't intentionally bad, but I think it was supposed to be intentionally not perfect, if that makes sense.
I think it's supposed to be unsettling to see a
Unsettling.
middle-aged man's face on a 12-year-old boy's body.
Right, exactly.
So there was that part of it, but then the actual transfer was a little fuzzy on the edges. It didn't quite line up.
Yeah, and everybody else was physical makeup as best I could tell, and it was amazing.
Yeah, it was fine.
So it
Yeah.
just felt way out of place.
Right.
I
It
would
was
say.
it was put a fat suit on, change the teeth, put a wig
Right.
on, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So the question is it that is Alex Garland saying that women don't realize that all men are the same or come from the same pattern, you know what I mean,
Mhm.
type of thing? Or is it that is he saying all men are the same, and whether she identifies it or not isn't really the point? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't need definition to those answers. Is it this way or that way? But yeah. Those are the questions I'm left with, like the bigger philosophical
Right.
questions.
And she does interact with her friend via
Mhm.
FaceTime throughout the movie, and her friend does physically appear at the end of the movie at the cottage. So we know it's not necessarily all within her head, but it could be, but it's not like the whole thing was a fantasy, because not that I
Right.
need an exact answer, but I need something, right? Like either some acknowledgement of why do all these guys look the same,
Mhm.
or some acknowledgement of her husband, right? So her husband committed suicide,
Mhm.
right? And we learn that she asked for a divorce, and he goes right to the if you leave me, I'm going to kill myself, right? Which is
Mhm.
an awful thing for a person to say, you know.
Sure.
And he does the whole, if this happens, this is your fault. This is on you.
Mhm.
And he ends up hitting her. She shouts at him. He leaves, and then she turns around and sees him falling right past their window,
Mhm.
and then finds him gruesomely dead on the patio below. So,
Mhm.
and I found it was interesting that the injuries to the men, because that's the other interesting thing, is all the men had the same injury. At one point, right, she stabs, like someone sticks their hand through the mail slot, and she stabs them and like kind of opens their arm up. And that's similar to how the husband was caught on the railing.
Right.
But then all of the men have that injury.
Mhm.
And then at one point, the men get a broken ankle, similar to how her husband did too. So I mean, so that was the other thing. Was it all the same? Were all the men the same man? Because they all had the same. They all carried the same physical injury with them.
Yeah, I mean, I think that obviously that was intentional. I don't
Yeah,
think
of
you
course.
accidentally do that.
No.
So I do think he's opened up a couple questions that he just doesn't bother ever.
Right. He doesn't even
You know what I
try
mean?
to
It could
answer.
absolutely be either of those
Mhm.
based on what's in the movie. I don't think there's intentionally any definitive answer to that. And that on one hand is very frustrating
Yeah.
because people want answers. And I'm a people and I want answers. But on the other side, it's kind of cool And I haven't decided which is more powerful.
Which is it?
You know what I mean?
This movie reminded me of Mother.
Absolutely. That was the one I didn't want to bring up.
Okay, good.
In the non-spoiler,
Yeah.
is it's very Mother-like, but I think Mother, while there's still some open-endedness to it, was defined enough that people could find coolness in its vagueness.
Right. Well, like with Mother, you kind of realize, oh, this is an allegory for the Bible and for the history of, or for human development.
Sure.
Right. All confines to this house.
Yeah.
Right. And then, yeah.
And at the end of it, you might be asking yourself, well, when did it turn from a normal movie to an allegory? And there's enough clues that eventually most people come to the final judgment that the whole thing is just one big allegory. You know what I mean? There never was a house in the middle of a field. There never was these people. Like from frame one, it's all allegory.
Yeah. Or Javier Bardem is like some god who's kind of playing the same scenario over and over again.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Whereas in this movie, I think some definition has been given by the fact that there's a beginning that doesn't take place in this universe, in the weird men universe.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the section that happens in the English countryside, of which the real world dips into with the phone calls. Yep. And then at the end, the friend shows up at the English countryside. But I don't remember there being like corpses in the front yard, which there would have been had that actually happened. Meanwhile, she's bloody. So
yeah, she's
something
bloody.
happened. Something happened. But there's no like clues that like it didn't happen. But there's also like no fallout for it happening presented in the movie.
And that's the cop out of the end. And I think this is what bothers a lot of people. So you get this David Cronenberg-esque ending where you have all these men kind of birthing each other. It's strange.
It's
like
it's very weird. It's like it kind of reminded me of The Thing.
It did. It was like The Thing and Videodrome all kind of mixed together.
In one prolonged, I don't know, genitalia stretching sequence.
Yeah,
I mean, it was like,
it
was wild. I'll just say that.
Like, I wasn't bothered by it. Like, it was weird, but I was like, oh, this is Alex Garland. He's giving me something here, right?
For sure. He was swinging bats.
He was swinging, yeah. And then the last man birthed is her husband.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And they go into the house and they sit on the couch.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, here it is. Like, here's her chance to finally confront her trauma of her husband, killing himself and blaming her for it and punching her and, being like this awful man. And you see all these men doing these various microaggressions against her throughout the whole movie. I'm like, okay, this is our moment. Either she's going to, she has this axe. Is she going to kill him? Is she going to yell at him? Are they just going to talk? Like, something's going to happen here. And literally nothing happens. It cuts to the word men, like the card title.
Sure. Well,
and
I mean, something happens. There's one line of dialogue.
What's the one line? Okay. What is it? I don't remember.
She says something. It's been a couple weeks, but she says something about like, what is all this about?
There you
something
go.
like that.
Yep,
and he says, we just wanted you to love us. And then it cuts to men.
So and then it cuts again to like her outside and the friend shows up.
Yeah. So I think the thesis is that men do awful things in the pursuit of women. And they, it's like a cyclical thing. I think the birthing that happens before that is like just kind of giving visuals to the idea that like I don't know, if you're religious, the sin of man, or you know what I mean? Like
there's
the
a
whole
lot of
like Adam and Eve
imagery in this. Yes.
Right. Yep. For sure. So I think that's another hard thing to swallow is like, if you're really trying to get to the root of what Alex Garland's trying to tell us through this fairly traumatic film experience, I would say, at least the one that he gives you right at the end.
Oh yeah.
Is I think intentionally traumatic for the people that are watching it. Is he trying to say that this is just the way it is? You know what I mean? Is he trying to say that women don't realize what they do to us, that they make us crazy? Is he trying to say all men are the same? It's just hard to tell exactly what he's saying here.
Right, because each man she encounters is like a different kind of bad man.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Like Jeffrey, I guess he's the microaggression. He's like, "Oh, where's your husband?" Or "Do you feel guilty for that?" And then you have
Right.
like the vicar who blames her for tempting him.
Right.
You have the cop who kind of gaslights her, where he's like, Are you sure? Are you sure that's what happens?"
Right.
And there's others like the boy who wants to play with her and she says no, and then he calls her bad words for rejecting him. Right. So
Sure.
like that's all pretty obvious. Like, oh, I understand which facet of male aggression you're supposed to be. Like,
Right.
there's no question about that. But yeah, like there's just
Like right at the end, the husband
Mhm.
his excuse, his answer for why all this has happened is because I just want you to love me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Which kind of feels like something that an abusive husband would say
For sure,
when you
yeah.
ask them, why did you hit her?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so yeah, it's hard to I think you could easily walk out of this and be like, I don't understand it. I don't care to understand it. It
Mhm.
was way too over the line at the end, and I'm done with it. And I absolutely understand if that's people's reactions
Yeah.
to the movie, and that's kind of what I felt at the beginning.
R
I don't remember what I wrote on my review, but I'm pretty sure it was something like that.
Ye Yeah, when I left the movie, my initial thought was, "I probably need to see this again to understand it. I don't know if I wanna see it again."
Yeah, this is my letterbox review.
Okay, let's hear it.
I'm not sure if this is disturbing on purpose or if its purpose is simply to be disturbing. Either
That's
way,
good, yeah.
Either way, it disturbed me almost as much as it confused me, and I'm not sure if it's worth attempting to go down the rabbit hole with. I think I probably won't. I think I'll just let it be for now.
N
And then I continued to think about it.
Yeah,
lot.
so a couple weeks later now, do you think this is a movie you would revisit?
Yeah. In
Okay.
fact, I kind of look forward to revisiting it.
Okay.
I'm glad you saw it because it's the kind of movie that like word could get out where it goes, and then like a lot of people just won't want to engage with it.
Yep.
Like they won't even give it a shot because
Yeah.
it does get very extreme at the end. If we were to do like another list of movies you'd never recommend to somebody, Men would probably be pretty close to the top of like
Yeah.
a round 2 for that. Like you'd really have to know the person to recommend this to somebody.
I
Um
when I told my mom, my wife, that was a slip probably. When I told my wife that I was gonna go see Men, I was like, "Do you wanna see it?" And she was like, I don't think I wanna see that, especially because it's horror." She's seen
Sure.
Ex Machina, so she knows some Alex Garland. And then I got home and I was like, "Yeah, Megan, that was a horror A24 movie. You would have hated that so much."
Sure. Yeah, I mean, what's a shame? Not necessarily a shame, but I am deathly curious what a woman would think about this movie.
Yeah.
You know what I
Oh,
mean?
yeah.
I just have no clue what an opinion would look like from that
Mhm.
perspective. I wouldn't say the movie made me think about anything as a man or like reevaluate what I've done in life, what I plan
Yeah.
on do. You know what I mean? I think maybe the movie has some motivation in that. Um, but it more just kind of felt like a nihilistic stating of the obvious of
Uh-huh.
the relationship between men and women. And
Mhm.
this is showing the worst versions of that. Certainly there are better versions of that in real life.
Yeah.
Men and women can coexist without murdering each other. Uh, most of them. And so and so yeah, this is the worst version of that. But again, I think I said earlier it just felt like a really extreme way to say something that kind of we all accept already.
Y Yeah, right, it's not reflective. It's not inner look like inward looking. It's just like, here's these terrible men.
Right.
Doesn't
And
suck for her.
yeah, and if you were to take it away from like the gender, it's just that we as humans want to impress each other. We
Mhm.
want people to like us. And sometimes we're misguided in that pursuit. And this one, limited it to the male female relationship, but I think just generally, even if you take it away from gender, it was basically just saying like, we want to be loved.
Yeah.
and whoever we pick that we want to be loved by, some of us will go to extremes to get that done.
They better love us back. Yeah. But I think it's the threat side of things. I want to be loved and you better love me back.
Right. So anything else with men?
No, I mean,
I had one more line on my review.
okay.
It was the next paragraph. It says, if the nightmare bear from Annihilation was your favorite part of that film, then you will probably love this movie.
I do like the Nightmare Bear from Annihilation,
Sure.
but it fits more into the whole of that movie.
Yeah. I think I had a visceral reaction from the end of Mother.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the movie builds to that in a very similar way than the compared to Men. But with Mother, what was happening brought the allegory home. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And in this one, I guess it did the same thing. For some reason, what was happening in Mother didn't horrify me enough to like kind of lose me a little bit. Whereas in this one, the sequence of like 4 dudes birthing themselves was just so
That was-
insane to me that I was distracted by it, I would say. So that's probably the difference between Mother and this is like, it definitely goes extreme at the end of Mother.
Oh, yes.
But for some reason, this feels like another level.
Because Mother goes extreme, but within the real world. Like,
in a realistic way.
in a realistic way, and not the real world. Yeah, I mean, like for me, the hardest part of Mother is the baby,
Mhm.
right? Which is a Jesus Christ allegory
Sure.
part of it. It's but still hard to watch, but
Mhm.
you don't have dudes growing vaginas giving birth to each other,
Right.
which this movie
Does
I don't
4
know.
times over in
Right, I
like
don't
2
even-
minutes.
No, like it happens once, and then this keeps happening. I'm like, how many male vaginal births am I gonna see in this movie?
Yeah, there's also just a lot of naked dudes in the movie and stuff like that.
There's the one naked guy.
There's the one naked guy
Yeah.
that keeps showing up. There's
Yeah.
a lot of
A lot of him.
for sure.
Yep. I think that's all I got on Mother. Or
Okay.
not Mother, Men.
Great. If you've seen Men, let us know what you thought of it. And thanks for listening. We'll see you guys next time. Bye.